It's a major transit route. It's a designated freight corridor. It's a busy arterial. I mean, we have over 13,000 vehicles per day traveling on the corridor, many areas, a lot of driveways, a lot of signalized intersections. So, we had a challenge in front of us to develop concepts and try to improve safety. There's some previous planning studies that I've listed here. These are all available on the project website. The graphic on the top of this slide kind of shows the exhibit that we presented at the open house meeting with the alternatives. So what we did is we developed these alternatives under some general guidelines, and really those guidelines, the project channelization focused. So this isn't a full reconstruction project. We considered all road users, including vehicles, transit, bikes, peds. We use standards and best practices. So as you know, the city doesn't have a robust library of standards and policies and guidelines related to active transportation. So some of those national standards are shown on the screen, but we use those to develop some concepts. And we also wanted to manage the cost and the scope of the project. Obviously, the project is funding constrained. So we were working with a budget that we had established for the project and the consideration of the alternatives. This exhibit that you see on the screen is available on the project website. Again, we had a survey open for some time after that open house meeting to get public. We had the open house meeting in November. We had over 60 attendees at the meeting, really well attended meeting. I know several of you were there. The online survey that was available through early December focused on identifying preferences on the alternatives presented. Unfortunately, we only got 49 survey responses. So just to put that in perspective, that represents less than 1% of the daily users of the corridor. But the responses that we did get were focused really, again, on safety. They prioritized the RFP, the flashing pedestrian crossings. There were preferences to provide separate right turn lanes for vehicles, and comments for bike lane physical protection as the highest alternative priorities. Precast curb, so physical curb was preferred over flexible delineator posts like we have on Washington Avenue for the bike lane protection. And then we did receive some comments in the survey that had concerns with traffic congestion and desire for increased cycle safety. In addition to the online survey responses, we received several email comments. I know several of those were through City Council. Almost all of those focused on cyclist safety and separation. Again, seeking corridor-wide bike lane protection and seeking elimination of separate vehicle right turn lanes, especially at Naval Avenue. Some of the comments we did receive, provided some sketches of different alternatives that weren't presented at the open house meeting. So I'm going to get into a little bit of weeds here. I apologize on separated bike lanes, but I think context is important as we have the discussion. So bike lane protection was evaluated using bicycle level of traffic stress methodology. I'm just going to call it BLTS. I have to keep saying that. As I briefly discussed at the last month's Public Works Committee meeting, we don't have a current policy or standard related to BLTS. BLTS basically measures a perceived comfort level for a cyclist traveling down a roadway. So it's a very kind of somewhat subjective, depends on the user, and it's a generalized stress level based on a few factors like vehicle travel speed, width of the roadway, things like that. We ended up using a method of measuring this that Washington developed for this initial screening. We also applied some engineering judgment the project based on some site-specific considerations. At the open house, bike lane protection was shown as an alternative in 2 locations. The first location was on the west side of the project, from 11th Street to Montgomery Avenue. Higher vehicle speeds there, obviously coming down the hill towards 6th for Kitsap Way. There's several back-to-back signals. once you get past Wyckoff. The second location was on the far east side of the project in the westbound direction between Highland and Washington, and that separation was recommended due to the site distance issue in that location. So while the input received praise for consideration of bike lane protection, there were several comments requesting protection be incorporated into the project. So some of the things that we considered looking at bike lane protection, again, we don't have a defined policy or standard. So again, we're using the best information out there. We have insufficient roadway width to meet standards in some areas, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. There's a significant number of driveways and transit stops, high vehicle volumes, cost, maintenance. These are all considerations. These aren't fatal flaws per se. They're just all considerations. All right, busiest slide. I apologize here. So again, bicycle level traffic stress. The scale that's used is a 1 through 4. So 1's going to be your lowest stress level, more suitable for children. 4 is going to be your highest stress level, which really strong cyclists would feel somewhat comfortable riding on. Just for reference, right now 6th Street currently a level of stress 4 for cyclists based on the Washout methodology. Another perspective, Lower Wheaton Way, based on the Washout methodology, is a level 2, where you've got the 2 lanes with the bike lane. Washout defines protected bike lanes as separated. So you see in the title of the slide, say separated/protected. So there's a little bit of difference in terminology based on the standard, but WashDOT defines a separated bike lane as requiring a 2-foot minimum buffer from the travel lane between the bike lane and the travel lane, combined with use of a vertical feature such as a flexible post for the barrier. The table at the bottom of the slide is kind of how WashDOT classifies the stress level. And it's based on the lane configuration, the amount of vehicle volume on the roadway, and what they call the target speed. So this table that I have on the slide shows how you would calculate or determine the bicycle level traffic stress for the WashDOT defines a separated bike lane. So the red box is the lane configuration. So for 6th Street, we would be converting from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction. The AADT is the annual average daily traffic. Again, as I mentioned, the corridor has well over 13,000 vehicles per day. So WashDOT caps their traffic level at 3,000 vehicles per day. So we'd be in that category. And then WashDOT defines the target speed as kind of your desired speed, which you're trying to achieve the posted speed of the roadway. So you can see in the table, regardless of the speed itself, we're at a level of traffic stress 2. The only way, based on WashDOT's methodology, to get to a level of traffic stress 1, which again would be your more suitable route for children, is to have a lower volume, low speed roadway with 1 lane in each direction. So you can see you really have to have less than 3,000 vehicles per day with that 1 lane in each direction, along with a separated bike lane to have that more suitable lower stress route. A level of traffic stress 2 can be provided on most urban roadways. So this slide shows kind of cross section of 6th Street, and you can see the width of the roadway between the curbs varies from 42 to 44 feet. We're a couple feet wider west of Warren, a couple feet narrower east of Warren. So Public Works Committee, there was some discussion about, possibly if we were to put flexible posts or some sort of protection in, what that might look like. So west of Warren, we would have just over 5 feet of effective bike lane width. Again, placing the delineator post just inside that edge line of the bike lane, similar to what we have on Washington Avenue. East of Warren, the roadway again is slightly narrower, so it would be just over 4 feet of effective bike lane width. In all of these scenarios, you see that the travel lane width is 10.5 feet. That was to accommodate the Kitsap Transit, and again, it's a freight route too, so 10.5 feet is kind of the minimum for that type of roadway. That's a slight reduction from the current lane width, which are approximately 11 feet wide. Getting into more about the flexible delineator post scenario concept. So the graphic on the left side is kind of hard to see, but essentially what I'm trying to show there is those yellow icons are all existing driveway access points. This is just east of Montgomery, between Montgomery and Bryan. It's just a sample snippet there. You've got the Gateway Park and Ride on the south side. So when you account for the driveways and the intersections and transit stops, only about 60% of the bike lane would be able to have any kind of vertical feature. You know, again, if it's a delineator post, only about 60% of that section of bike lane would be able to have that sort of protection. That percentage is generally consistent through the project. Again, the takeaway here, just for information, is if we were to consider additional bike lane protection, there's still going to be a large amount of bike lanes that remain unprotected just due to the number of driveways access. Flexible delineator posts are widely used for bike lane separation. Where we have locations here in the city that we've used them. They have a low initial cost. They're highly visible. They're able to withstand impacts. The downside of this type of separation is that they are not hard protection, like a concrete barrier, not continuous, and again, those get hit. There's a little bit more maintenance burden keeping them in place. So the two photos on the right side of the screen kind of shows the two options. The top one shows a separated bike lane for Waukesha's definition, where you've got the buffered area between the bike lane and the travel lane with the vertical feature. The bottom picture is what we have in Washington Avenue, which wouldn't be considered a separated bike lane. It's essentially putting the delineator post on the edge line of the bike lane. This slide really just compares the estimated cost of installing the flexible delineator post for the current recommendation, which was presented at the house, to project wide. What we found out is it would be about an additional $250,000 to extend the bike lane protection through the entire project. If we were to use some sort of hard element such as precast curbs with flexible delineator posts, we could probably expect to double that cost, by close to $500,000. We don't recommend, again, going back to the space limitations, we would recommend putting any kind of hard barrier anywhere that would be able to provide, some sort of, 2-foot buffer between the vehicle lanes and the bicycle lanes, just from a safety standpoint. Several incidences where, cities have put some sort of hard protection on the curb, and cyclists can hit the edge of those. Vehicles hit those, so there are some safety considerations for the hard protection as well. So I want to take a minute to pause, answer any questions related to bike lane protection, and try to get some maybe input or consensus from the council on maybe next steps or direction moving the project forward. So just to kind of recap, so the current recommendation remains to only provide bike lane protection to specific locations where we can provide the separation with the vertical elements. Again, focusing on achieving bicycle level traffic stress 2. The council can, as an option, provide concurrence or input to proceed with a corridor-wide bike protection strategy. However, the project budget would require compromise potentially in other areas. I mean, again, I mentioned that it's looking good that we're going to receive funding from Waukesha grant. But there's trade-offs, right? So as soon as we add additional elements of the project, there becomes a funding gap, and we have to determine where that compromise happens. For either scenario, we'll be further evaluating the use of hard protection if feasible. Additionally, any installation of bike lane vertical separation, we'll have to consider long-term operations and maintenance. Um, yeah, I just wanted to kind of pause here and open it up for questions and discussion related to bike lane intersection.
Okay, Jane.
So I have a couple questions. Number one, I was under the impression that the city does have a standard for bike lanes that has been in place for a long time, and it's 5 feet, not including a concrete gutter. So the first project that is going to repave the majority of Sixth Street or the center section, are you paving over the gutter pan with asphalt?
So I believe the gutter is variable on Sixth Street. So in some areas, there's not a gutter pan, in some areas there is. So, Shane, is that something that you would be kind of matching in kind with what's out there today?
Yeah, so in a lot of locations actually out there, we pave right up to the base of the curb. There is a gutter pan. So
Right.
when we went through for the past 6 years and paved the 4 sections of the corridor, we had to upgrade curb ramps. So you will see some curb and gutter out there for those
For the
locations.
maps, yeah.
But we had to match in with the asphalt adjacent to the face of curb in those locations.
Okay, I get that. But I'm pretty sure the city does have a standard for 5 feet
We
wide.
do have a-
bike lanes.
that today, actually.
Yeah.
It shows a 5-foot bike lane with including the curb pan or the gutter pan.
It includes a gutter pan?
Yeah, if you look at our standard details and it's in the roadway crossing, unless there's another detail that I'm missing.
Okay, because,
No.
I mean, when the city uses WashDOT standards, those does not include the gutter.
Yeah, so there,
So it depends.
yeah, even if you
Who's
look at
your
NACTO, kind of the leading national, agency that gives guidance on active transportation facilities. They also have a different, kind of, desired minimum for bike lanes, but they do talk about if you do have a gutter pan, there is a, minimum, again, each project is different.
So then, another question I have, who's paying for the intersection of Naval and Sixth? Is it the Naval Avenue project or is it the Sixth Street project?
I can answer that question. We are really trying to figure out the scope of work for this project so we can figure out how we can phase in and coordinate both projects together because there's going to be coordination and considerations. So we do have the intersection right now in Naval Avenue, but it could be that depending on the features and the elements of this project and the timing of this project, it may be something that we would need to shift over, that work to be compatible with other projects. So at this point, it's not known, but we're hoping to get to a point where we can understand the scope of this project and make those decisions.
Yeah, I think the answer to that becomes a lot more clear once we kind of figure out what's happening or what the proposed design concept is at Naval, and then we presented one that showed right of way acquisition, right? As soon as you acquire right of way, then it becomes a snowball effect of signal, reconstruction and private property improvement.
So then, just as a comment, AASHTO has now produced a bicycle lane design guidance manual. And actually, there are local people who are going to buy it, but it was $500 for one copy. And so they're hoping the county would buy it or the city would buy it.
We've already,
You have the new one?
well,
Okay.
we ordered.
Yeah, I can't remember AASHTO. There's one that it's on pre-order, and then I think they're gonna have them available at some point.
Because the snippets that we've looked at of it, what is designed on both Naval and on Sixth Street doesn't meet those new guidelines.
Right. So again, I haven't seen the entirety of the new manual, but the way I've seen a lot of these manuals is, there's the desired design, and then there's design options when you're working with a constraint. So there's kind of a level of, this is what what you should seek to achieve. If you can't achieve that, then here are your kind of options of how to mitigate develop design strategies to work around existing constraints.
I'm just hopeful the mitigation isn't lack of safety for non-vehicular traffic.
Yeah, this manual is really new. I mean, it just dropped for us, I think, a couple weeks ago in order to be able to order. So we're all waiting to, dive into it when we get it to figure out what it says. But we don't know at this point what's in there.
Okay. I'll let other counselors have a chance for questions.
First of all, congrats on the grant. That is,
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
exciting.
I'm glad we talked about through all the funding priorities. I know that was the quickest way to get to this project, so that's fantastic. And was it, but I have 3.4 million total in my head, is that right? Or-
It was just over three, it was like 3.1 million.
Okay.
That was construction cost, and then we factored in some internal cost of construction management. So
Okay.
it's not 3.1 million at par construction.
Okay.
That's the grant amount, not
That's-
including match.
There's no match.
Oh, no, not much.
Yeah.
So that is full
That's the
funding.
full funding amount.
Oh, that's good. No, great presentation. Kind of echo, I think a few of us have said it before on that survey, because I remember go through the questions myself and I got some feedback that I think there was some low attendance because I remember I took it and I looked at someone's like, do you want A or B? And I'm like, well, no, neither.
Either.
And there wasn't a whole lot of flexibility to respond. And I heard some people kind of started taking it, got frustrated, and said, never mind. So I'm a little leery of interpreting too much from the survey questions, but I'm glad we've gotten a lot of written and verbal input. So I remember talking at the open house, and I'm looking at this picture here. If we,
Is that part of this slide deck?
yeah, it was a couple slides back, and it's the picture was showing the width.
Yeah.
Separated, protected bike lanes?
I thought we could
Typical
basically
section?
replicate what we have on, yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
What we have on Washington, the full length, without having to sacrifice much of the center turn lane.
Yeah, so the majority of the project, we would be able to achieve, a similar configuration of Washington. It's just, again, a couple feet difference east of Warren. Again, I mean, that's a lower traffic, and you could even say lower speed potentially segment of the project. It's just the trade-off is, and this is where it gets really subjective, right? You may have someone that says, I prefer to have a wider bike lane without any kind of delineation. And you might have someone that says, I'd be okay with a narrower bike lane with some sort of vertical feature there. And that's the challenge when we're looking at these options is there's such a wide range of user perspectives, and this is getting into an area where it's like, okay, there's not a lot of guidance on having reduced bike lane widths, when you're looking at other features, right? So,
I'd point out the gutter, like the gutter pan is part of this. Anywhere that we have a gutter pan where we ground and we match it into the lip of gutter, that 5 foot width includes the gutter pan, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, like Washington,
Not
in
at
that
all.
case, yeah. Yeah, Washington's like 5 foot, including the gutter, so we made it work there, yeah.
Right.
And also a little bit of the challenge is that when we take a look at an active standard, they do allow you to go down to 3 feet for a bike, right? If you have to, right? But so there is flexibility that they provide in there, but what it comes down to is user preference, right? And what people feel comfortable with, and that's a wide range, right? And so there is some flexibility for us into those standards, but cool.
yeah, I mean, the other thing, we've talked about a little bit about this, is the 5 foot level of traffic stress, right? So, I think at the end of the day, right, I don't think anyone's saying that, not providing additional protection doesn't provide a safer environment for cyclists, right? It's how you measure that, right? So what I mentioned was, I don't think, even based on WashDOT's criteria, that we're ever going to get to call an all ages and abilities facility just because of the volumes, the driveways. There's still going to be unprotected segments. You've got these areas. I mean, we haven't even dug into. There's several properties that have curbside waste collection. So we're getting, another thing that we need to dig into with waste management is, how would they approach, a section of roadway that has protection, in a safe manner, right? So There's all sorts of different factors that we're trying to consider. And I think the recommendations that we brought forward with open house were objective. You know, we could objectively say, like, this is what we feel provides that level of traffic stress too, which again encompasses a much wider, broader spectrum of cyclists from a safety standpoint. But also isn't just applying, something across the project that doesn't really push the needle, right? So I think what we're trying to understand and figure out is how do we move forward with this project and get HDR, moving forward with the project, understanding kind of how we want to manage the scope of this project, because I think as soon as we make a decision, and we're open to whatever that decision is, we just need to manage the cost appropriately, right? It's our job to manage the cost and make sure we're getting the best safety improvements for the money that we have available.
Sounds good. So I think my personal opinion to go forward is, and I say this as both a cyclist that rides all around town myself, and I've ridden Washington protected, unprotected. And what I think is the vast majority opinion from a lot of the community is any sort of protection is better than none. And that's I know I feel that personally. And even if there's gaps in there, even having the occasional bollards, no, it's not going to stop a speeding drunk driver or something like that. But it really does help. It makes me feel safer when I ride. And I think as if I'm driving, it makes me pay attention more to make sure there's a bike lane there. So I think what we really do need on the table and the options when we look at alternatives is still that as much protection as possible, the whole length. And yes, there'll be gaps due to driveways and places like that. And if it impacts a small segment of 6 between Washington and Warren in terms of the center turn lane, then see what that looks like without a center turn lane there, and just have that on the table, because the cost doesn't seem.
Again, I missed that.
Oh, like if there's a small segment between Warren and Washington, where in order to have enough bike lane width, you do have to remove a little bit of center turn lane. I think that should be on the table. Like, show us an alternative that has the reasonable level of protection, even with just bollards along the whole length. What does that look like?
Between Warren and Washington.
The whole length of 6th Street.
Okay.
But it just sounds like there's some concerns about squeezing space between Warren and Washington here. So
between Warren and Washington, there's different scenarios there. I mean, we've got on-street parking, so we had an option that kept some on-street parking, we had an option that removed on-street parking to provide the center two-way left turn lane.
Yeah. So and cost, what I'm hearing, we got $3 million for construction, a couple $100,000 for protected bike lanes isn't gonna blow the budget,
it could
right?
be. It could be with
cost is
with
a
our
big factor here.
Can I just say, we have to be careful of saying protected bike lane, because if we give you a 5-foot bike lane or even a 6-foot bike lane with a candlestick, vertical element, it's not a separated or protected bike lane. So
Fair enough. Okay.
it's more protected.
Right.
From layman's terms, but we're not going to be able to provide a separated or protected bike lane with a 5-foot bike lane and a 2-foot buffer unless we eliminate the whole, like I think
Center
it's
turn
fair to
lane.
say the whole center turn lane. And that eliminating the center turn lane has safety implications for drivers too, right? Like that's when you're going to get road rage, rear enders, that you're going to have queuing. So this project, when we evaluated it with the study in 2020, 2019,
Yeah.
was a 3-lane, going from a 2-lane to a 3-lane with a 2-way center left turn lane. That way people can get out of the lane, take a left turn, and they're not, they're not going to get rear-ended. They're not holding up traffic. So there's a benefit to the left turn lane that I don't think we should be too quick to disregard.
Fair enough. So I think just making sure we got as many options, and keep those options on the table, and we got all the pros and cons. If that's the info right now, it's we got 1 or 2 alternatives so far. I think we need number 3 and 4. Look at it all. That's just my take.
Okay, Anna?
Thanks. So congratulations on the grant. I had hoped to talk about the survey at some point, but this is a really packed evening. I'm just going to say that all of the comments from the open house and from the emails and from people that I meet on the street or at First Friday or at Safeway is protect the bike lanes, the whole length of it. This is what the people want. And I guess I'd like to quickly address something that was buried in here of like making sure that the bike community doesn't have an outsized presence. and the people I know who have joined with Street Smart or West Sound Cycling have done so because their individual attempts to bike safely have failed. Like the same reason that people form unions and join unions is because individually they weren't getting where they wanted to. This, I want to make sure that we're not thinking of the bike community as people who just like to go out and recreationally bike around. I think that's really important because the purpose of this is to link, the bike lanes just debouche suddenly at Kitsap Way, and it's like, oh, you're on your own now, kids, and nothing starts up again until downtown. So this is the missing link, and getting it protected all along that corridor. Let's get this part done, and let's look at the whole bike lane. Because what this means is we have an opportunity for development all the way from Kitsap Way to the ferry terminal that is not necessarily car dependent. And that's the big deal.
I didn't understand that last statement. We have an opportunity to do what?
We are, one of the reasons we're doing this is to foster development. If you have a path to get to work without using a car, then that is,
Okay. I
yeah,
understand what
it's
you're
like
saying.
development that doesn't necessarily need, every household doesn't have to have
Okay.
2 or 3 or 4 cars.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
That was pretty much it. The more protection, the better. And I honestly don't know if going down to 5 foot is going to be a huge deal breaker for bikers. I don't know. But I do understand that it's unlikely that we can turn 6th Street with the very large trucks that drive on it all the time into a safe place for 3-year-olds to ride on their own. But older children, yeah, let's make this a beautiful gateway. Thanks, all done.
Okay, Michael? Again, thanks for all your work on this. So I definitely agree that we need to, put as much sort of safety as we can. A question I had is, what does it take to take back a driveway? Like, is that something that we've talked about? I was on some of the images, like I saw somebody that's got 2 driveways on 6th Street and 1 driveway on the corner, the corner street, and so we might not be able to do it for the onset of this project, but if we think of what we can get done as the start, and then we could look at ways to continue to build on that, continue to make it safer. I definitely think the candlesticks and stuff, as many as we can get, are important. Kind of like Jeff was alluding, it just helps the driver, it's sort of like, education that you are sharing the road and something's changed and something's different. I know that my neighbors I live on 6, directly across the street, put their garbage, on the sidewalk in the mornings. So, then you've got the garbage things that have to be able to get across and things like that. So there's going to be lots of issues. But one thought is, can we look at, again, maybe not to get this project done, but can we look at reclaiming some of these driveways? Maybe there's a way we could incentivize the property owner. I'm sure there's value in that, but we're also adding a ton of value, I feel, by slowing the wallets down on 6th Street for these businesses. So I think that's the biggest thing. When I hear about the standards, yeah, it'd be great if we were putting a brand new street in,
Right.
with nothing. I mean,
Right away.
I'm kind of just assuming here, but like, I have a retaining wall on 6th Street, and I'm sure I used to have a yard that went down to like a 2-lane dirt road once upon a time. And, we've given and given and given. And I love the idea that, I don't need the land back, but that we're going to give it back so that the community can use it to ride their bikes and commute and just, again, slow folks down and feel safer. So anyways, I think I've kind of said my thing, but I just, again, would say I support as much as we can, but I get it. If there's not room to put even the candlesticks, and then at least we have the bike lane and hopefully the brakes in it, drivers won't feel like it's a free for all because there's no candlestick there. They'll understand that it's that sharing the road. So Thanks. So we have Denise online. Go ahead, Denise.
Muted.
So I will.
Can't hear you. Denise.
No, I do not have her muted.
She doesn't.
She
look like
has
she's-
herself muted, maybe.
It doesn't look like it.
Do we have?
Maybe her mic.
Oh, let's try to turn the volume up.
Now?
There we go.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to commend staff. Nick, the presentation is great. Plenty of visual, it tells us the hot spots. I could tell that it was a different kind of presentation at the public meeting. I just really am impressed with it, and I think it solicited some real engagement around this. And I remember a member of the Planning Commission was at the open house, and we were standing looking at the level of stress, and he said, "Gosh, I'd be satisfied, I think, if we got it down to a 2." And I just wanted to say that, that as much, we set the bar really high with our advocacy community, and we want to support that. And yet I also think that we are practical people, and we're going to arrive at a really good solution. I think there's been some great discussions in the Public Works Committee, and I want to give a shout out to Jane, who's chaired that, and to Councilmember Coughlin. It's been some hard conversations, some difficult conversations, but I really see movement and evolution with this. I do, Nick, and everybody else from Public Works that's there. Thank you for this. I'm sure it's not over, but I really feel good about where we are with it. So thanks.
Okay, so first of all, I want to state, I'm not putting time deadline on this. This is a very important thing. We got to get this ironed out. So we're going to take whatever time it takes. Before we go to this round, do we have any more round 2? Before I ask Nick a question about where we're on. So Nick, Ned, do you have enough guidance, or you need more particulars for us? You good?
Yeah, so this is just a pausing point. I have a couple more slides for.
Right, no, I understand, but
Yeah.
as far as this,
I think we hear that
Bike
the
lanes.
width of the bike lanes is like whatever we can get, maximize the bike lane, maximize candlesticks wherever we can. It's gonna be gaps, there's gonna be issues. I think we can work with that.
Okay.
I think, are we proposing some curve coming down Fitz way or not? Or is it all candlestick?
Well, we are, so, I mean, again, we're trying to manage the budget as best possible. Like, our hope would be we could get some sort of, hard element in, on that, section between, 11th and.
The spot that really needs it.
Yeah, Montgomery,
Right.
right, we've got higher speeds come down the hill.
Yeah, so in terms of, I think I struggle with eliminating the two-way left turn lane. I think that is, I think that's a challenge, and I'm not sure I'd advise that. I think we can try to maximize bike lane width. It's gonna include the gutter pan. We can try to, if we can actually separate and actually put a buffer and actually afford some curb somewhere, I think we should be trying to do that, right? I think that's our intent, if we can, and it's gonna be budget constrained, I think. And we don't fully understand that yet until we get enough directions to know what the whole picture looks like, right? And then we can start seeing what those costs look like. I think you've got some more slides that we need to address that have, some other questions like right turn pockets and things like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, just to kind of tie a bow on this, I mean, the input we're looking for, consensus work for, is really to get us in a position where we can kind of work with HDR to kind of formalize, I mean, not nail down a exact scope of work for design, but kind of define some parameters that, we can feel comfortable bringing, back to council for contract supplement. So, understand, acknowledge that, there's likely going to be a lot more decision making. It's probably going to continue to be public engagement on the project. So that's going to continue. But, again, just kind of record what we're hearing, some of the conflicting, desires on the project, and just make
think the clarity about BLTS two is important too. Like, are we all on the same page about BLTS two for moving forward?
Mhm.
On the wash, based on the wash dot.
Based
So
on the
that,
standards, yeah.
so
Yes.
that, is a big hurdle, I think, that helps us have clarity.
So, yeah, Michael, go ahead. So I just, and Jeff's idea of center turn lane, where are we? We certainly don't need a center turn lane, I don't feel, from Pacific to Washington.
Right.
So, so then we're only talking the next, the block, I mean, shouldn't, yeah.
I think I was thinking, like, between, like, when you said, Washington to Warren, I think of Washington to Warren as a whole different streetscape than I think of Warren to 11th.
Yeah,
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like Warren to 11th and Warren to Naval, Warren to Callow,
Mhm.
that is a very busy, high volume
Right.
street.
Mhm.
The street volume, speed, availability of parking, changes when you get east of Warren. So I think we definitely can look at that
Okay.
quieter section.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
Right.
think there are sections where you don't want to give that up, where you have higher
Yeah, I
volumes.
think-
and-
No, we get that.
I think that was a great idea, because I'd also say to give it up,
Yeah.
to keep some parking too. When we were busy here, people need to park. And so,
Right.
I think
there's
that's
some of that folded in.
great. Okay, I just wanted to just,
Okay, yeah, that was helpful. Like, I'm not trying to give you the impression that we have to have it everywhere on the whole corridor, but there are like 3 distinct corridor sections.
Yep.
I think the Kitsap Way section is a high speed, high volume, downhill racetrack. And then you have like Callow or Montgomery to Warren, that's got its own different flavor. And then it gets quieter once you get east of Warren. So I think we need to kind of consider those 3 segments. From that perspective, which I think we are doing, right, Nick?
yeah, we have to remember that the parade comes down 6th Street too for Unfortunate Day.
That's
Yeah.
important.
So the bike lanes would provide more, chair spectators.
Festival Street.
Yes.
Low on
All right. Let's go on to right turn lanes next. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure this is our consensus, is we want as much protection as possible along the whole corridor. Okay, that's it.
All right, so moving on to separate vehicle return lanes. So as part of the initial design concept phase, updated vehicle operations analysis was conducted at all of the major intersections on the project. That analysis also looked at the impacts of providing or not providing separate vehicle return lanes at intersections. Of the 9 intersections evaluated, right turn lanes only recommended 2. The intersection of Naval, intersection of Warren. At Naval, the eastbound right turn lane was recommended due to the Naval Gate queuing operations in the morning. Westbound, 6th at Naval was recommended to mitigate projected 2044 volumes, which put the intersection level of service into an F, which is failed. And then westbound at Warren was required to mitigate intersection level service F in the PM. And that was based on current travel volumes. The existing separate right turn lane at Wyckoff and Park Avenue were removed from all the concepts we presented in the house. They were not deemed operationally necessary. Several of the comments received requested no separate right turn lanes be provided, especially at Naval Avenue, due to the created conflict points with those classifications.
That wasn't the only reason. The big reason was pedestrians have a much longer crossing.
Correct.
It's not
Yeah.
just bicycles.
So some of the, again, similar to how I presented the slide on the bike lane protection, some of the considerations, again, is looking at, substandard vehicle operations. We all know that substandard vehicle operations can lead to negative driver behaviors during high congestion periods. potentially would impact right-of-way acquisition at Naval Avenue specifically. So the decision really has a huge impact on the project from a scope and budget perspective, and if we acquire right-of-way or not. And then we have the potential to, again, eliminate, that mixing zone conflict, and as Jane mentioned, kind of try to shorten the pedestrian crosswalks there.
Clarify level of service for a leg versus the intersection.
Yeah, sure. So when we look at the vehicle operations intersection, we look at the delays, and those delays are captured from like an approach standpoint. So, say if you're traveling westbound on 6th Street, what your delay would be, say at Naval. And then once you look at all the approaches on the intersection, those are kind of aggregated into an overall intersection level of service. So you could have a level of service F on the approach, but your overall intersection still could have a level of service E, for example. So, when we say, an approach level of service versus an intersection level of service, that's what we mean. We mean, the operations of a specific approach versus the operations of an overall intersection, which is more general.
Does everybody understand level of service and what that means?
Yeah,
Okay, all right. A lot of people don't, so.
so one thing you have up there, it says that the Growth Management Act is saying that we can't have substandard peak hour vehicle operations, and that's really correct.
Well, it's carried through the comp plan. So if you look at the transportation element, the Growth Management Act requires our comp planning process for growth, and maintaining level of service is part of that. And if you look at the WAC, which I printed, you're required to adopt a level of service for your arterials, which these are arterials, and council adopted a level of service E for the arterials in the transportation element of the 2016 comp plan. And it still looks like that in the draft transportation element that we're working on right now. So the requirement is that we adopt a level of service standard, which we have done, and that's what we, are following. But and it's E for arterials. I don't think it adopts a level of service standard for all of the other classifications in neighborhood streets and things like that. But for the arterials, for Naval and 6th, right, we have a level of service E standard that was adopted by this council for the comp plan process. And when we say required by growth management, well, the WAC is written to around the Growth Management Act, and the WAC requires that we have a level of service standard. So there's a lot of semantics.
But there's also, council can decide that certain intersections, they could change the level of service.
And I think you're supposed to have a
Specific.
process established for that, which we also don't have.
Well,
But
we
can
have an ordinance right now that sets it, so we could have a new ordinance that alleviates some intersections.
An ordinance that sets the transportation element of the comp plan?
No,
or-
it sets a level of service. We have a specific ordinance.
So that ordinance is for concurrency. And does everybody know what concurrency? I don't even want to ask that question. So that ordinance is established so that we can have, for developers, we have a baseline level of service that we hold developers to when we evaluate their transportation impacts. And let's say they come in and they're gonna move 6th and Naval to a level of service F. Well, then there's a concurrency requirement, and concurrency really means they're going to do the work or pay, to improve the intersection capacity to bring it back to a minimum of an E. So the ordinance that you're talking about is really about our concurrency evaluation for development. So if you go into that ordinance and you change that to an F, then what you're really doing is making it so developers don't have any concurrency requirement when they're working on their development projects. And Shane, correct me if I
They
said
haven't built
something on
any-
there.
They haven't built anything in the past 20 years, any of the developers.
That's not accurate. They have, but I'm not saying our concurrency process is great. I'm not defending it. I'm not bragging about it, but it's what we have, right? And there have been improvements that have been constructed.
And we've
But it's not a
accepted
ton.
Yeah, we've accepted developer mitigation funds to be able to construct it. It's because they like to have that be on us to construct them, not necessarily.
Well, and an example would be
Right.
Kitsap Transit on Wheaton Way, like they had to construct that intersection as a concurrency requirement.
And signal.
So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. But there's not a lot of it,
No, there
Right.
isn't,
I agree.
not by private development.
And the reason for that is the level of service requirement is, it's really hard to meet that here in the city. So
So fundamentally, the level of service that we designed to is coming out of the transportation element of the comp plan. And then that other place that we talked about it in the ordinance is really related to development. So just be aware of that, and that might be a whole different public works committee
Could
topic.
be.
Yeah. All right.
Quick,
Yeah.
quick follow-up, which is here, these volumes are 2023 and estimated 2044. So what is the difference between the 2023 and the 2044? I mean, you're planning for an estimated future, yeah?
Yeah, so this is all done in alignment with the transportation element update, so traffic modeling and land use growth projections. Develop travel demand.
Yeah.
growth system.
The 20,000 people that are supposed to come into Bremerton by 2044, that's what. And the level of service F in the second bullet, the westbound at Naval, that's the 2024 volume that's projected.
Well,
That's not
we've
the
never
2023.
once met the growth management act projections for growth at Bremerton,
Ever.
ever.
But we have planning policies and a comp plan that says we're going to, the council's gonna review and buy into, or I guess we need to start from scratch. Right, like PSRC assigned the numbers for our growth that we're
Yep.
planning to, so we're sort of trying down a path for that.
Okay, Nick, I proceed. Can I? Go ahead. On the westbound at Naval turn pocket, that seems like something we could wait on. We could, go without it. And maybe in, 10 years, look to see if we need to acquire right away to put a turn pocket in there. But
Yeah.
I think we're open to that, right?
Yeah, and I think, I've got, our current
I'd,
recommendation.
I'd almost say the same about the eastbound onto Naval. I don't think I'm up early enough to see the traffic that gate gets, but it's also, and I saw their comments that they submitted. But that's not their main gate. That's
It's a very active gate, though.
I agree. That's great. It's the one I used as a retiree. It's only open Monday through Friday, and not not 24 hours like the main.
It's not dictated by level of service, but you have a pretty big stakeholder, which is excessive amount of traffic that, right? I don't know what that means.
Can you go back?
Oh,
So,
that's the one.
Thank you.
I think your argument is sound. You could get rid of it. Would I get rid of it? I wouldn't. I mean, we know we have an impact from a
Yeah.
gate, and it's hard for us to model. Like the gate operation, queuing, and the impact from that gate operation isn't something that's easy for us to model.
Yeah.
And I think that they are a big enough partner in the city that maybe want to accommodate that right turn pocket. And I'll say this: our first funding, for construction application that we're going to do right now, we're planning a DSIP application. That means the base commander supports the project. So, it's something to consider.
That's Naval, that's not 6.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's it. Yeah. you're right.
And if we
I was
don't
in
get
there.
it, we're renaming the street.
But if you plan 6.
Only
so that you
plan-
don't have a right Naval. And then you go for funding for Naval, I think it's not a very distant gap between that budget, right? So that's our approach right now for funding. When we come to Public Works Committee to talk about how we want to fund Naval, the first one is a DSIP application, which we just got one for the Central Bremerton Forest Main. If we can be successful with that, that'll be a huge
Mhm.
benefit to that corridor.
So it's anecdotal, but when I used to drive my car to catch the ferry, there was quite a bit of built up on Naval and going taking that right. There was. That's anecdotal, but I remember that. So you guys would have the studies. I assume you have some kind of numbers you look at, or maybe not, but I'm telling you, there is.
Anecdotal, like we hear about it, we don't. measure it.
Yes, it's there.
Am I gonna have to start getting up at 5 again? So,
Jay, we get coffee and just sit out there in the chairs.
so, there's a national movement to stop right turns on red, which is, I mean, people want a right turn lane because they think they can bypass the light. And I personally would like to see no right turn on red throughout the city, even before that becomes national. So if we eliminate right turns on red, do we need right turn lanes?
I'm not the one to. Like, Shane, or
We eliminate right turn on red.
Mhm.
Do we still need right turn lane?
I think there's a queuing issue that you should answer about.
The turn lanes are a capacity. Improvement, so it provides additional capacity, and operational improvements at the intersection. So it's,
Yeah.
if you know, a right turn on red is limiting the movement, which, actually limits capacity is what it does. So you'd still need it for capacity standpoint. So the two different functions.
Yeah, you almost, and again, you know, you have to model this out, right? It's software that models all this, but you know, if you've got a no right turn on red and a separate right turn lane, you know, you have less vehicles making that right turn. So you almost need a longer right turn lane to address the capacity, or else you're going to starve out the capacity on the through lane.
So we're gonna talk about this with Naval.
Yeah.
This is gonna come up with Naval, and we're gonna have our designer at the table at that point, so maybe we wanna table that, but if you go to our recommendations, is that where you went? Nick?
Yeah, and this was just showing a couple of the right turn concepts. I think, you know, seen
Okay.
the concepts, you've seen those. So our current, so I mean, again, going to our current recommendation, kind of pausing, getting input from the council is we would like to recommend deferring that westbound right turn lane at Naval.
Mhm.
It meets the intersection operation levels. You know, it's something that we'll have to continue to monitor. Obviously, you know, any intersection traffic demand changes, you know, with that. We still recommend providing that eastbound combination right turn lane at Naval to mitigate the AM operations. And I say combination right turn lane because we were really trying to avoid acquiring right of way. So preliminary cost, if we acquire right of way and construct the separate right turn lanes, I mean, it can be upwards of $800,000 or so once you factor in the signals and private property impacts and shortfalls, things like that. So we're really looking for a solution that eliminates the need to acquire any right of way so we can move all that additional money into other safety improvement. And we're also recommending the westbound right turn lane at Warren Avenue, again, directly tied to the intersection operation. Meeting our policy requirements. I've got a couple of options here. I mean, kind of talked about these. I mean, if we don't provide the right turn lane at Naval, you know, you just have to acknowledge that there is going to potentially likely be issues, spillover issues from the queuing that, you know, could create other traffic related issues. So that's really hard for us to
Cut through.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that scenario is really hard for us to model because that backup is all dependent on naval gate operations, right? So, you know, it's just really
I
hard.
think you saw in the email today, like a 5-minute delay is a 60 car queue, right? Based on what Allison said. So if it's 10 minutes, 100, like it gets bigger and bigger. And I think it's when they do those things that we actually see the cars queued all the way back up to 6th Street and around the corner. And I do see that sometimes. I come in at 7:30. So I'm not here at 5 or 5:30 either, but I do see it sometimes when I'm coming through. And I think that's a function of gate operation and
Mhm.
having to stall things for some reason.
What is the AM peak?
The time?
Yes, the time.
What do we?
And then I don't have that in front of me. I could depends on the intersection.
Naval,
Okay.
Naval and 6. If you could find out what the AM peak is and let me know that, that'd be great.
wanna
I
say
think
it's
so
like
too.
5:30 to 7 or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll knock on your
Get
door,
open
Michael,
2:30.
and get lawn chairs.
Is that enable and six? that you're
Yes.
asking, Jen?
Mhm.
That's it. All right, go Michael and then Jeff.
Jane, when Jane mentioned no turn on red, it got me thinking, and the question I was gonna ask was, I was looking for some of the concern points of the turns, but then I'm also wondering, is there some also technology solution to help manage a right turn? You know, whether there's no turn on red, there's a specific signal. We also stop bikes. There's not a ton of pedestrians in that intersection,
Yeah, they,
but if
Yeah,
we
there's-
do this, that the goal would be to have more pedestrians also. So, you know, and it's funny, I just realized that I use that right turn all the time. But I, you know, but I was just wondering if this, anyways, and I don't need an answer right now, but I was just wondering if there are some technology things where we could, you know, really actively, you know, see the cars in the queue for the right turn, and maybe the bike signal's red and the crosswalk's red and the turn is green, and then anyways, so that's all I have to say. Jeff?
No, same thought. We touched on this at the December Public Works meeting where I feel like there's possibly an option C. I started drawing on the whiteboard, and I think we agreed I'd be able to get smarter, but there's a kind of a nice diagram sent in at one of the public comments in the packet. And this is because the main worry with the right turn lanes is you get traffic and bikes crossing, right? And then you get conflict points, and that's bad. And this kind of mirrors, I mean, ones I've biked in Seattle and Victoria and some other places where you don't have the conflict points, but it does require having a separate bike light. So the bike can, and I can show it to everybody at once, but
pages are.
this is page, oh my God. It's not coming up with a page, 111, there we go.
Thanks.
We're gonna talk about that
Yeah.
later.
Oh, okay. Yeah, anyway, so I think just if we can better understand this, either through Public Works or another presentation, see if this is an option. I think the construction money, we have it, so we can do bike lights, and then you can have the cars turn, like Michael said, while the bikes wait, and then vice versa.
You're talking about naval, all right, not 6.
Naval at 6.
I guess I'm talking in general, when we're talking about turn pockets anywhere.
Well, I
You could
guess
have turn
I'm
pocket.
hoping with this conversation, we get
Mhm.
enough definition of council perspective that we can start moving forward with something that's meaningful, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that we're gonna accommodate that on 6th Street in terms of the dedicated like protection, and I can be wrong about that. I don't know.
The only way that we'd be able to, again, you know, avoid right away and be able to consider, I think that's like what NACDA calls dedicated intersection. No, it's a dedicated intersection. It's, if we didn't provide the eastbound right turn lane and we don't provide the west, so basically no right turn lane in either direction, that's the only way that we'd have any kind of space to look at providing those buffered bike lanes with some sort of vertical element. And then trying to figure out how we could get the turning radius to be compatible with, you know, the current naval roadway, and then also compatible with the upcoming Naval Avenue project.
Yeah,
So there's gonna be a nexus here with Naval Avenue.
right.
We have some slides that we can maybe revisit this on that. project.
Yeah, I think that would be clear.
Yeah, how we can.
Yeah, I feel like maybe I'm just feeling like there's an option that's not been, that I don't fully understand. That you could have the turn lane without the conflict points, without the bike lane and the turn lane crossing. That essentially, the turn,
We're gonna cover that when
the
we-
turn
yeah,
pocket.
yeah.
The turn pocket's there without having the conflict. It just requires having a bike light at the intersection.
We cover that when we talk about naval. later.
Okay.
So I think I'm just clearer that.
I got keeping that on the
slide
table. Yeah.
that's may even have some of what you're showing there on it.
Anna, and then we need to get to the ask, make sure you got clarity from council and move on.
So the eastbound right turn lane, that just seems like if you build it, they will come.
Naval,
If you're heading
Yeah,
eastbound
Sixth and
on
Naval,
6th and
yeah.
you come to Naval, where right now there is no right turn lane. But if that 1 hour, up to 1 hour queuing is a function of gate operation, there is nothing that we can do about that. If we build a right turn pocket, other people will go, oh, this moves a little faster if I go down 6. And then they will go there and they will use that right turn pocket and the queuing will still occur. It's queuing that occurs for up to and no more than an hour a day, many days, not all days. Is that correct?
It's the AM peak. So yeah, it's an hour, hour and a half, and it's based on gate operations. But you have to remember, right now you have 2 through lanes. So that right through lane acts like a really, really long right turn pocket that queues up for quite some distance. And the right turn pocket that we're talking about providing is absolutely minimal. It's like 2 or 3 cars of storage or something, I think. It's not going to save the world, but it leaves you a single through lane that might not be impacted by the cars that are trying to turn right and are stuck from the queue coming up from the gate. So it's I don't know if it is a perfect solution, but it's something that accommodates, keeping through traffic moving, because once it backs up in that right turn pocket and into the 1 through lane, then all of 6th Street is backed up and you're going to have everyone scattering, trying to figure out how to get past that bottleneck.
So do we need a through and left turn lane at each leg? Can they be shared?
I don't know. That's a question I don't know an answer to. So
Yeah. Because I mean, the whole goal is short crosswalks.
there's a lot of right and left turn volume that we'll talk about when we talk about Naval.
Mhm.
That you'll see, and the numbers are pretty big. Some of those right, like the peak hour left turns, some of them are like 250 cars an hour for left turns. That's a significant amount of cars, and the right turns are like 170. You'll see that on when we talk about Naval.
It just seems awful that all the residents who actually live in Bremerton will have less safe intersections because of 1 hour of gate operations for the Navy.
Is that a question? I can't comment on that. I mean, what we're trying to do is balance capacity, head safety, bike safety, trying to balance cost. We're trying to balance constrained right of way. We're trying to not do reconstruction, beyond, especially on 6, like reconstruction. We're not trying to reconstruct 6, right? All that's happening right now with phase 3. We're trying to have a corridor that we can come in and rechannelize and try to maximize the benefit to all those groups. So, and the Navy is one of them, right? And transit's one of them. Bikes are one of them.
So can I just ask my second and final
Yeah.
question? So you could construct this without a right turn pocket, either eastbound or westbound at 6th and Naval. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so I mentioned this is important. It is important, but this meeting is starting to feel like a public works meeting.
Yeah.
So let's get to the ask, and then we need to get on to the agenda bill items because we're going to talk about Naval later on.
Do you have any more slides? Or are you done?
Really, just the highlight of the cost. So, just highlighting that if we don't acquire right away at Naval, essentially we feel comfortable that we can provide any of the alternatives we presented at the open house meeting. As soon as we acquire right away at Naval, that really limits our funding availability for improvement. So at that point, we're really just at a bare bones project. No vertical features in the bike lane, no green pavement markings. I mean, it's really just, kind of a bare bones rechannelization, which, would really be hard for us to, feel comfortable supporting, what we're trying to achieve here. So just kind of, again, putting in perspective the significant impact of cost associated with Naval Avenue intersection.
How long is the grant good for that we may be getting? The one where we,
well put.
number 19?
Yeah, let's see how the budget goes with the state.
Right.
Yeah, well, I didn't get the impression that it was super aggressive. I don't know, Shane, I mean, it's the similar bucket of money as like a state schools, but it's
Yeah,
state funded, it's not federal funded, so there's a little bit.
and sometimes they do make these federal funded. We won't find out until we get a grant letter, but if it's state funded, we have some flexibility on time. We don't have a time commitment to spend the money. But there is an expectation that we spend the money within a certain, within a reasonable time once we get the grant.
They want to see
So
constant
they want to
progress.
see constant progress on it. But it's more flexible, which is great for state funding. But if it does, in the off chance that it does come in with federal funds, then, which I don't think it will, but there is a chance, then there'd be some potential time requirements on
Well, it makes sense that Naval get built first and they pay for this intersection. For the safety of. I don't want to see Sixth Street that we've made such a huge contribution to just be lowballed because of the intersection of Naval and Sixth.
The problem with that timing is that we have, let's say that the state figures out the budget and this grant is awarded. We do not have a construction grant, or we have a plan of applying for grants, but we don't have guarantee or a grant in hand for construction of Naval. So we could be in a situation where we're funded for Sixth, we're still not for Naval, right?
Yeah, and I think the other consideration is that we still have a long period of right-of-way phase on Naval Avenue, which we'll get into it a little bit here.
Yeah.
But right now, it's going to be about a 2-year period, and assuming that we can get construction funding, we're going to be a couple of years out of constructing Naval. Whereas I think Nick is on track potentially with maybe the end of this year being done design on this project. So the timing doesn't work very well with the two projects. So that's something we'll have to.
But Naval still has the budget to buy the right of way that may be needed at this intersection to leave money for us to get better improvements on Sixth. If Nick doesn't have to buy the right of way, right? Let's pretend it's $500,000.
Right, that easy to go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, Nick would have different right-of-way requirements on Sixth Street than we have on Naval. So we do have budget in Naval to acquire right-of-way, but it's for turn pockets on Naval that are different than what Nick is looking at for Sixth Street.
So can I just for clarity for me, this would be great for me. So we've asked about no right turn on red. I think that's something that we need to push off till later. Like if it's nationally required, guess what? Everywhere in the city is going to have no right turn on red.
Yep.
I don't think we want to hang up this project while we try to figure out what the impacts are on this project. So I would hopefully get some sort of consensus from council that that's not a deal breaker that we have to fold into this design. And then the other thing that I think is important is if you go back to your slide for our current recommendation, it's the eastbound at Naval and the westbound at Warren. Are we good with that? Or like you asked a question, hey, we don't have to build it, eastbound at Naval. I recommend that we do. I think it's good practice. Honestly, it's probably good practice for us to build the right turn lane at Naval that's westbound because we're going to have construction money and we see a problem potentially coming. But I think we can also wait to see what happens, right? I don't feel real strong about that. But we're out of 3 recommended, 3 right turn pockets, we're recommending 2. Are we comfortable with that?
So I'm comfortable with it. I see this as a compromise and I can see valid reasons for why you do that. I know not everybody's being satisfied going one way or the other, but to me, it's a compromise and it makes sense. So I'm comfortable with it. How's the risk? Jeff?
Do we need to eliminate an option right now? Can we not keep both on the table? I think that's where I'm.
We need to start moving forward with what we don't want is multiple alternative analysis process where we keep looking at alternatives. So I guess you tell me the answer to that question.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't think we had a no current pocket alternative on the table that we can stare at. Right, for Naval. If I remember the open house, the alternatives
The
had.
impact is the queue.
Yeah.
We're talking about eastbound on Naval, turning right to go into the shipyard gate. The impact that's hard for us to model, that we know we'll get a queue back there at times. whether we should provide a right turn pocket at that location. And it's not like, it's not level of service. It's not taking us to an F until it does, right? But it's like we have anecdotal information and we know that there's going to be impacts from that gate that we think we should be providing the right turn pocket. So our recommendation is that we do that. And I don't know what else we would evaluate other than we would show you a lane that doesn't have a right turn pocket, right?
So it looks like you would get 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 cars.
Yeah, I think that's max 3 probably.
So.
Yep.
So they're gonna block the lane anyway, if the Navy isn't able to operate their gate correctly,
But
it's gonna block it. I mean, you've got,
there's gonna be lots of things that happen, like somebody's gonna get up there and see it stop, and they're gonna go past, and they're gonna kind of cut through the neighborhood to try to go around that and get back to Burwell to come in left on Burwell, right? Like, there's weird things that happen when it gets to that point, but at least we provided the minimal that we thought we could. That's, I guess, my best pitch for that. But if right now you guys say, hey, we don't want that right turn pocket, that gives us some clarity to go do something. I don't recommend that, but if that's what we're hearing tonight, then we have some clarity to move forward, right?
Yeah, and
That
I
would be helpful.
Yeah, I guess as far as what the alternatives would look like without the right turn lane, I mean, essentially you would gain space for, a minimal buffer for the bike lane, between the bike lane and the travel lane, which, again, if we're looking at flexible.
you would
certain
shorten up the
areas.
crosswalk by 10.5 feet.
Yep, yeah, essentially.
You would.
I mean, from.
We're not widening the road, but
Widening the
But-
crosswalk.
Effective,
Well, we are, they're
No.
buying
Crossing-
they're buying
If-
right away.
we're not changing the curbs on Sixth Street.
Correct.
We're bringing in bike lanes. So if we now on one side have a shared
It's showing in,
bike lane, right turn lane. But the thing to keep in mind, when we say that it's only for a peak time in the morning, that's the only time that's gonna be, that's also the window where it's gonna be the most issues with conflict.
what page?
I think most of the day it'll operate.
I think you're right.
Okay.
I think we recognize that this is an EMP problem and it's a gate operations, right? And we can't model it very well, but we know there's going to be an issue there. And so the question is, do we want to accommodate that with a minor improvement? Or do we not want to? And I think, Jane, you're right. If you narrow up you narrow it up for the crossing, if you don't put it in, our recommendation is to put it in. And I'm asking with clarity if we're comfortable with that or not.
Well, here's another question.
Yeah.
Does the bike lane have to go in between the through lane and the right turn lane? Because that is extremely uncomfortable.
That's the
Why-
answer. I think you're gonna hear yes from us on that later.
So that
So
one
it
time,
can't, so see how the bike lane where it's marked green, right?
yeah,
So the bike riders are forced to go in between 2 lanes. They have to go in between the right lane and the through lane. But the other option is that you keep the bikes at the curb.
but then you've got bikes trying to go straight and cars trying to turn. And
That's why you have a bike
Bike signal
signal
car,
like you do on Washington and 6th.
So the reason for the bike lane being between the right turn lane and the through lane is the cyclists position themselves. Kind of, that's why it's called through lane. They can position themselves, so you don't have that conflict at the intersection. So you're right, if you have to the right of the right turn lane, then you try to mitigate that right hook by having a bike signal or some sort of protected bicycle. base.
Maybe we need to move on. I'm not sure we're gonna get that consensus.
That's why I feel like
We're looking at the bottom one right now, though,
better
is
before I
the,
can say anything.
Bottom is what we would currently recommend, which is that combination. And this is similar to what we have on Kitsap Way at several intersections.
The top one is a right away.
It's pretty scary there.
Yeah,
my concern
I
with
see a lot of people
with
using
with
it.
not doing any turn lane and then maybe looking at in the future having to put it in is like, I feel like the proposed is like a compromise. Can we try to share this lane, try to share some space? And if we see that doesn't work, we can also to, that can be a different project, but to acquire right away and do the safer version.
I
Yeah,
think we covered a lot of ground and I don't know that we're
Yeah.
gonna get an answer. And so what I'm hearing is you'd like to see what it looks like, a configuration of what it looks like either way. Is that accurate?
Sounds like we're going back to Public Works
Yeah.
Committee.
Sounds like-
Okay.
I'm just gonna offer mine, which is, I don't think either of these right turn lanes at Naval are a good idea. I understand that we have a policy that requires that you mitigate at Warren, but I don't think either of these are necessary to accommodate a 1 hour problem that this isn't really gonna fix. It's like we'll spend a lot of money on right-of-way acquisitions just to show willing. Like, we tried. Kind of like you throw the duvet over the sheets. It's like I tried to make it. It's a lot of money for increased unsafety of cyclists.
Okay, so point
done.
taken, we're gonna move on.
Yep.
Thank you, gentlemen. I will see some of you later on in the night. And by the way, I think I may want to move the playground equipment up before we get to the Naval Avenue, okay?
Oh, good. Oh, good.
So, because the rest of us, what was the deal about the car turning into a pumpkin or some kind of thing? Okay, now we're gonna go to item B1. This is the mayor. Confirm appointment of Tia Hudson to the Arts Commission. And I also want to let council know I did remove some items from this agenda thing. One, it was our goals and stuff, because I knew this was gonna be a long, and this is very important. Again, I'll stress that. But let's, if we can, let's be brief on some of these items and realize we've got Naval Avenue to discuss. So, Mayor, appointment of Ms. Hudson to the Arts Commission.
Yes, good evening, council. So yes, I'm requesting confirmation for the appointment of Tia Hudson to a vacant Arts Commission.
You guys know Tia Hudson is our current poet laureate. She does the typewriter poems outside of Volca every first Friday. She's been rigorous about giving poetry readings all through her two-term tenure? Three-term tenure. She's good people. I think this is a great idea.
Any other comments? Okay, consent? Consent, thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
There you go.
Heavy lift, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, next item, item B2, which is the interlocal cooperative agreement with Kitsap County for housing incarcerated individuals. We have Forest Lieutenant Brian Heffernan, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
You
Lieutenant.
always seem to get landed with this one.
You know. This one's a little different. So this agreement again pertains to the incarceration of prisoners held in Kitsap County Jail. Generally addressing the cost to hold inmates arrested on Bremerton Municipal Court charges, replaces the prior agreement, which was executed in 2018. And for the last several years, we've had amendments to that. Importantly, this agreement represents a significant increase, about 30%, in the daily bed rate for incarcerated individuals. So it raises it from $157 a day to $204. It also requires the city to pay for certain medical costs not covered by the county's contract with their third-party healthcare provider. Should be noted that the prior rate that remained stagnant since 2021. So there's going to be a jump. The new agreement, which is identical to that being signed by the other municipalities in the county, reflects the rising costs to provide these services, particularly the increased expenses for healthcare that the county is incurring. Kitsap provided a breakdown of some of these costs, and they've increased by about 300% since 2018. And they'll likely continue to rise. They gave us some estimates for the next few years. So I'd anticipate that the amendments to this agreement will reflect that.
Okay, any questions from the council?
Consent.
Consent.
So I just checking.
Go ahead,
Yeah. So it's only 2,000 budgeted for 2025. So is it an increase of 2,000 or the total cost for this whole thing?
It's only 10 days.
Or you asked me what the budgeted amount is for 2025.
So yeah, I'm just looking at the fiscal impacts that have just under 2,000 that was budgeted for 2025.
I believe, I thought 2 million was budgeted for 2025.
Yeah, it's 2 million.
So
Oh, there's
the period is supposed to be a
There's
comma.
supposed to be a comma. That threw me off.
So-
Okay. Like, what?
I
Because I was
believe
like,
it's-
wow.
I believe 2 million.
Yeah.
Director Riley's here, but I believe it's 2 million.
That makes a lot more sense. I
Okay.
was, yeah.
I mean, briefly, it could be That's it.
And how many people you arrested?
I actually looked into how many people are in there in an average day and how much it costs an average day. It's extraordinarily expensive. I mean, currently over $6,000 a day is what we're paying. But, you know, there's, and that gets worked out. 'Cause it's not just a, you know, it's not just a single person. If we arrest on a warrant, there's a warrant from, say, someone else in the municipality. It's split up. You know, there's half days and whatever, but it's very.
Well, that makes more sense.
Who provides the healthcare at the jail?
They have a third-party contractor. I'm not sure who their current one is. I can look into that for you. And there's very few providers that will actually do that, and it's become extraordinarily expensive for them.
I wonder if it's contract Peninsula Health would do, because probably the majority of folks are already their clients.
Okay, how are we gonna treat this? Consent?
Consent.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant. Next, for the next two items, we have Managing Engineer Janelle Hitch for items B3 and B4. They're very similar. Item B3 is the resolution to approve provision of wastewater utility services to 1910 Southwest Cook Road. Go ahead, Janelle.
Second here, I just wanted to bring up a couple of figures.
By the way, Denise, I look over to my right every once in a while, but just please speak up if I don't see your hand raised.
I will.
Thanks. So as you mentioned, there's, sorry, I have to get going here.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I've got two items that are very similar. They both are asking, we had requests for water service at two locations. And because of VMC 1503-040 service beyond city limits, the policy, general policy is that the property is located outside the city limits annexed into the city before wastewater utility services are provided for use. There are two exceptions under parent D. One is for annexation not feasible, and the second is for failed system. Under this first item, we have a failed system at Cook Road, and so we had a request from the owner to get sewer service, and like I said, this one's outside city limits. It's also outside our service area and outside the urban growth area. And the health district did provide a letter that's in the packet saying that the septic system had failed and was incapable of being repaired, and that the connection would be necessary to provide basic safety and environmental lines. And also this one under the third item that you need to be able to consider this is that the property is financially sustainable for rural densities. So we are able to serve this and not have significant financial problems with it. The owner would be required to extend a sewer main for about 250 feet and then provide us, they would give us that sewer main and then make the connection and pay the general fees. So we recommend providing this, that we allow them without annexing.
Okay, any questions?
Well, we had a long discussion about these two in Public Works, and they really are different. This one, I mean, they're gonna lose their house if they don't have sewer, but I'm curious why the county is allowing houses to be built on property so small that there's no set-aside land for when their septic fails. And is there anything we can do about that?
I believe that the community health department now requires that they have a reserve area for any new house that's being built. So if they have
Or
to be
any-
on septic,
Or if they're doing land divisions or anything,
Yeah.
like they can't sell part of their land to the neighbor or anything, right?
As he did.
It looks like they did.
He says that he appears.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, this one I don't have any issue with. I mean, they're gonna lose their house if they don't have sewer.
Right, it's no cost to the city. They're
Right,
gonna
no
pay for it.
cost.
So,
And they'll pay 1.5 times the sewer rate too.
any other questions or concerns on that one?
Yeah, just checking on, it's 250-foot extension,
Approximately, I just did it.
more or less, and it's financially sustainable.
Right.
Good. That was it.
How do we treat this item?
Consent.
Consent.
Consent it is, okay, then we'll move on to item B4, which is similar resolution to approve provision of wastewater utility service at 13 properties on Sherman Heights Road.
This one's different.
Sure.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Janelle.
okay. So, yeah, this one is different than the, sorry, this doesn't look very big, but this is in your packet also, each 158. So in this case, Sherman Heights, the properties, the 30 properties are outside city limits, but within the urban growth area and within our wastewater service area. And it was included in the 2014 wastewater plan. And because it's outside the city limits, it requires annexation. And the code provides for an exemption if annexation is not feasible. So I worked with the community development and did an analysis and showing here the area of the properties is in orange and the annexation area being considered is outlined in pink. Per the Kitsap County planning policies, can annex a property if it's contiguous to the city limits and the 13 parcels are not contiguous to the city limits. So they have larger study area was needed. So the properties in green on this figure are already have outside utility agreements with the city, so they already have sewer service. And the proposed area in that pink that's outlined in pink is 201 acres with 359 parcels, and the assessed value is $118 million. 60% of that property value is needed for annexation, and that would be about $71 million for value. The existing OUAs plus 13 parcels, the value is $67.1 million, so just below that 60% threshold. So it's at your discretion whether to provide the wastewater service. Again, they would provide an extension to the sewer service in this area, and we obtain that area. So the financial situation is very similar. I'd also like to point out that the neighboring property just went through this process about 3 years ago, and that was approved as well. They haven't developed yet, so that area was not included in this study. It's not shown in green yet, but so we have a similar sort of precedent where we provided availability letter for them. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to provide the sewer service.
Sure. Jane, you guys had concerns, you discussed this?
We had concerns, and part of the concern was the staff told us that the ordinance that had been updated to allow council to make this decision was pretty onerous on staff. And that, I mean, we can't force them to build to our standards. I don't feel that we should keep allowing all these little areas to not annex in. I mean, the next time, where's that pink line gonna be? Is it gonna move out even further? So therefore, it's gonna be higher for them to annex in, so therefore, higher to meet the threshold of forcing everybody else to annex in. There's a large property next to it. If it had been developed, it would have been a forced annexation, but they haven't. So the developers are going around and now they're able to build to county standards, not city standards. And someday, if we ever have an annexation plan, we'll be stuck with properties that are then going to be asking us for improvements to their property to meet city standards.
Just to address that, Ned, I thought we could require them as part of this to develop their sidewalks and everything to city standards as part of the agreement.
I think, there's an opportunity, is it with the public place construction agreement or with the OUA that we required that?
Yeah.
Cause I think we added that to the Enitai,
Mhm.
project, and the pink line shouldn't move because that's the established UGA boundary. So it takes the whole county comp plan process to move the pink line. So that's not an arbitrary area. That is the
Okay.
UGA boundary for that area.
But if the other project that we or a previous council approved had been developed, then this whole area would have been a forced
I think
annexation, right?
even with
For-
that property value, we're still under the 70 or 60%.
Yeah, we did take a look at that
70%.
and ran the numbers with that
Yeah.
one.
I thought we were pretty close to,
It's getting closer.
Oh, yeah, it's close, but it's still didn't go over.
It's like 54% or something.
I'm just,
So this is why we do OUAs. Like, there was a time when I first came to the city that we had a woman named Terry O'Neill, and she worked for the mayor, and she gathered up all of her little OUAs in a basket and then would bring something to council to annex an area. There were a number of those that happened when I first started with the city. We don't really do that much anymore, but when we sell service and we get an OUA, at some point, we're going to tip over that point where we can make a decision if we need to annex that whole area versus, just waiting for someone to come in and propose it. So I think selling service is a good thing. I think getting an OUA is a good thing. The city standards part of it is a good concern. I'm not saying that's a bad concern, but I think in terms of trying to promote annexation, OUAs are a great tool for us to be able to do that. We don't use them like we used to, but
I only recall one property being annexed in the past 10 years. And
I think
then
that's accurate.
two
Corbett, by
On
Corbett.
Corbett?
by
Yeah.
Corbett,
Yeah, I
and
think you're
then,
right.
and then the property by the airport before that.
And that was right, and the Corbett property wasn't the city dictating annexation for any reason. That was
Right.
the property owner wanting a better zoning density for
Right.
that area, right? So it's a council decision. We've had service approved for the property directly next door. It gets us closer to the target number to be able to annex at some point. But I mean, we've given you all the information that we're supposed to provide, and now it's a matter of going to council and unless you have any other questions, I'm not sure what else to say about it.
So,
Oh, okay,
go ahead, Denise.
good job.
Yeah, I don't feel the same level of angst. I do see it as a process, part of the process of annexation. And so I guess in this case, I'm a little bit more in alignment with Nick around this, or excuse me.
Nick,
Yeah.
She loves it.
I know.
I do.
What did that say about you?
I just, forget your name from time to time. But I do, I don't see it as we're almost there. We're this close, it's just connected to part of the process. So I don't have any angst around it.
So I think Ned, you were here, but Andre and I actually drafted an ordinance that created this, put it in front of the council. And the whole reason for the revised ordinance was to make developers annex in when feasible. Worst case scenario, not feasible, but still desirable. They signed the OUA. I think the council is willing to do this as long as we have some assurance that it will be built to the roadways and all that stuff, to city of Bremerton standards, and that would be our insistence
Mhm.
to approve this. If we have that, I think we got a deal.
So,
Well,
Go ahead.
on that is, can we create some sort of agreement with the county that when they're approving something in our UGA that, or something that says like, or whichever standard is considered the higher or something like that. So,
that's a good idea. I don't know what it's gonna take to make that happen.
it doesn't have to happen before this. but
It could be an ILA.
I think that's a great concept. I think it's understood by DCD. I'm not sure who we broker that with at the county, quite honestly.
Anna, and then we gotta let Nick answer the question.
Is he gonna become Nick now?
Oh, my goodness. That was Denise that did it. I've known Ned for years. I've hardly ever knew Nick. He was hired like 2-3 years ago. Yeah, I don't even like Nick. Anna, go ahead.
Thanks. So I feel a great deal of angst about this also. We just, at our last study session, approved a $5.008 million loan for the Tracyton Beach sewer. So it's like building sewer that where we have no influence over what goes into that sewer from that end. Makes me very, very nervous indeed. Like, does the county zoning have the same requirements for septic that runs from houses to the wastewater?
They have to request an availability letter, which is part of it. We have to provide an availability letter. They have to tell us what their land use is. They have to tell us what their impact on the wastewater is. They have to tell us what their strength is. So it's like that process of approval. Part of it is clearly understanding what the impact is on our system and how much flow it's going to be and what pipe sizing, and if there's a pump station, which there is in this case, the sizing of that. So we have all kinds of input on that.
Okay.
So, I was going to ask though, and I think Kylie, how did we handle the Anti street standards issue? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
I seem to remember. I think we put a provision in the motion that says something about it be provided it's developed according to city of Bremerton standards.
I think we hear what you're saying. I think we can mimic Enitai. I just don't know exactly what that looks like to take to council.
So
next week.
could we
So
put this
it's
on
not gonna be-
consent, and then we'll have our eagle eyes and look for it to make sure that the wording was added, and if not, I'll pull it and we'll put it on general, or we can pull it. Time is not of the essence. We could wait another 2 weeks to
I
get it
think we
all.
gotta be able to figure this out and get an agenda bill updated by next Wednesday.
Yeah.
We do think there is some case law that's relevant to, because this is a situation where this is in our sewer availability area, within our UGA, issues that came up in that case, all that is currently pending decision. I argued that last week. And so we'll do what we can.
Okay. All right, so we have.
Final
Go ahead.
question, please. So it's not feasible because they don't want to be part of Bremerton. That's what makes it infeasible.
No,
Because DCD said it was too hard for them to go and talk to all the property owners.
They're
They have a
not-
survey, do we not?
they're not adjacent to the city limits, so that's
Right.
one criteria. And then there has to be a 60% value. And in order to get that 60% value with that over and above the OUAs, they've got to go talk to property owners and get people to sign a petition over and above it. That's the difficulty. So we required Enitai to do that, and they were unsuccessful, right? So that's a tall order for developers to go do.
Okay, but I mean, it seems to have been pretty much like that every time we try to get something
I
back.
agree.
So I'd like to really make sure that we're at what? We're not at 54, we're at 57.8. So that is really close to 60%, but I just really would like at some future point to figure out how to do this annexation better and more clearly, because
Yeah, we need an annexation plan.
yeah, or a policy, or both. Okay,
Point taken. So you have the direction, council, for Wednesday.
We'll try to put the documentation together that requires meeting street city standards for their zone.
All right, thank
And
you.
lighting and everything.
If we can do that and then I don't know what the issues she was talking about with the anti. I don't know what, if there's a
Yeah.
entanglement there. We'll find out.
Right. So that's the plan, consent with provision added. Thank you, Janelle.
And the eagle eye
Anything
thing.
Ed? Okay. Next item up,
Playground.
no, we have the A5 alternate transportation program grant agreement with Washington State Transportation Improvement Board for the Warren Avenue sidewalk gap. This one should be real quick.
Yep.
So.
Sounds good, Connor.
Got the
As
easy way.
yeah, we did, and it's a good one too. So, this is, we brought this before Public Works Committee in December. We recently received a grant from TIB to basically be able to build a sidewalk from Burwell on the east side of Burwell Street or on the east side of Warren Avenue from Burwell Street up to 4th Street. You might remember this is the area that had those wooden garages that they were renting there that had been there since I think the 30s. When they tore them down, there's no sidewalk there now, so we're gonna go in and build it. It was basically the cost was, we've estimated it at $57,000. The grant is $43,320, so it's paying 76% of the cost. Our match is just a little under 13,000, and we're gonna do this all with city crews.
Consent.
Concern.
Mike, I just have a question. Why is the property owner not on the hook for the sidewalk?
I believe it was part of the negotiation to get us some additional right of way at the corner. And we traded for doing the
It was
sidewalk.
our decision. Great.
Okay, so that consent it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to slow it down.
For the record, that was Mr. Gunnar Frederickson.
Yes.
Brought that up.
Nick Frederickson.
Nick, AKA Nick. Let's just call everybody Nick. We're done.
We're all
with it.
Nick at night.
All right. So as I forewarned, we're going to jump to item B7, which also involves Public Works. The Public Works Agreement for purchase of playground equipment from Landscape Structures Incorporated. Oh, Anna, this is you.
Yeah.
For Haddon Park.
Finally.
Does Anna like the toys in the playground?
All right,
You know,
so
Oh, this is interesting. Why does it say Public Works Agreement? We have our Parks Director here.
it's the type of agreement. It's,
Okay.
it's for a public works project,
Okay.
not from public. Works. If that. can be- So I can do the 1 minute or I can do the 7 minute.
One.
Well, we're gonna do the one if everyone's okay with it. They've had a chance to review the packet, and just for the record, it's our Parks Director, Mr. Tim Barker, that's presenting. So go ahead, Tim.
Can we do the 7 minute at the general meeting next week? Many people would like to hear it.
on consent.
Fair enough.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, so this is a purchase of playground equipment for Haddon Park project. As you remember, July 3rd, you approved the project for the department to move forward with that. And so this is just one of those pieces of that puzzle as we begin to put everything together. This August, we had our Parks and Rec Commission meeting, which I actually was in attendance for prior to working. I just happened to be in town. And so we had an open meeting with a number of community members that were on site that went through the 13 different potential options that we had come up with from 6 different vendors for playground installation. And then from that meeting, we continued to have the availability of people to come on site at Sheridan Park Community Center to be able to provide their feedback. At the early December Parks and Rec Commission meeting, we walked through those results. The selected concept, which is in your packet, was received twice as many votes as the second option. We've made a few adjustments. There was a 4th slide that was planned in there. We changed that to a climbing option. So just to kind of diversify things a little bit. But this is for $136,000 and change. 132 of that comes from Community Development Block Grant. The remaining portion will come from the Recreation Conservation Office as part of the funding for the grant for this project. So there's no city funds going towards this. So this would be an agreement with Landscape Structures, is the parent company that we would be purchasing equipment from. We have previously purchased equipment through Landscape Structures for Warren Avenue, Kiwanis Park, and then also, I think Evergreen Rotary Park is the other one that we use there. They are known within the industry as the top playground products that are out there. So,
Good question. How come playgrounds don't have swings anymore?
This one
so we
does.
have,
Where?
yeah, there
Where?
are four
All the way over to
swings.
the right, all the way over to the right. It's got like 5 or 6.
So I think
Which right?
there's a couple other, you have a couple other pictures that better shows that. So there's 2 infancy swings, and then there's 2 regular swings that are there. So there's a total of 4.
Okay.
I have a question. Since there's no, in the whole concept plan of the park, the playground is tucked back against the retaining wall where the former playground was. In the beautiful photos that were, concept plans that we're seeing here, it's, I mean, naturally, I know it's not going to be in a grove of any kind of trees because it won't, there's nothing indicated. But it's open on all sides on this inset plan, whereas in the whole concept plan, it's backed up against the retaining wall. So I'm just wondering which is accurate.
So the concept design that you have was created by Playscapes, or Play Creation.
Yeah.
Is the local vendor rep, and so their focus obviously was on the playground area itself, as opposed to putting it in a realistic. It is adjacent to it.
Yeah, 'cause the retaining wall has seating and all that.
Yeah. So there's a retaining wall along the edge of the exterior portion. But yeah, so they're
like along here
well, they're
or along
concept-
here?
along the exterior of where the bark is. There is a retaining wall that goes
Back here?
around the entire. Yep, that goes around the entire playground area.
Okay, so.
So when they create these, the focus is the playground as opposed
Yeah,
to
no,
what the
I-
surrounding-
It's just a background that they use.
Yeah, no, I get that. I just wanted to, like, people in my neighborhood really will
Yes.
want to see this and I want to be able
So
to
it's
tell them.
adjacent to the hillside, which will have some trees on it, and we'll be doing landscaping there.
Okay.
Just immediately next to it will be the prefabricated restroom, and then adjacent to that is the sport court area.
Yeah, so I have
Sure.
been following this, I
Yeah.
do assure you. So, it's one border of this will be the retaining wall, and is there anywhere where people can see which border that will be so that they can really envision it? Because it's been a long time.
Yeah, so I mean, we have photographs that we can provide too. Yeah.
Okay, that would be
Sure.
great.
Yep.
I'm really happy about the swings.
Me too.
And people.
Yeah,
will
that
be-
was something that was definitely an amenity that people wanted to continue to see and incorporated.
And I also really like it that there's things that actually challenge kids. So it's not all for like 2-year-olds. It's a really, really nice design. Thank you.
And our color palette matches very well with the restroom.
Green?
Yes, it's a green brown. Yeah, it blends very well.
Okay. Thank you all for your patience.
Sure.
It's been a long time on this one.
Any other questions? So Tim, I've asked this question with Jeff before, and he is quite knowledgeable about it. I don't believe this has to do with the equipment, but is the surface from rubber? I am sure you're all aware of all the hazards. So can you just tell us what the Parks Commission and you have decided for the
Sure.
safety of the kids as far as the?
Yeah, and obviously looking at the 132,000 that was solely dedicated for the playground, that was kind of we ended up at 136, but we were able to add a feature and kind of move some things around. But one of the things we did not incorporate into this was a synthetic surface or a pour in place or like a rubberized pour in place or a tile, rubber.
Yeah.
So this is engineered wood fiber that's
Okay.
accessible as well, so it's a bark.
Like, what's up at Pendergast?
Um,
At the playground at
yes.
Pendergast?
So the other thing is recently PFAS has come into the news and I'm not an expert, but I believe maybe some of this stuff has artificial grass. A lot of it has PFAS. You're aware of
Yes.
this.
Yep.
So, okay, so you're on it. We're all good.
Yep.
All right, thank you. How do you want to treat this item?
Consent.
I would like to put it on general business.
You're allowed to put it on general business. It takes one council member.
Okay,
Tim, we'll see you next Wednesday.
sounds
Thank
good.
you.
thank you.
All right, now, how does the council feel? I can go all night without taking a break. So
I'd like a break, please.
I'd
Right.
like a break.
how many minutes do you want?
Are we gonna
Yeah.
vote? Because I would not like a break.
I know. No, you know,
Jeff
we're
would be
we're
the
gonna,
power.
we're gonna,
Like just 10 minutes, not 9, not 8.5.
okay, we'll go 10 minutes, but 10 minutes sharp, and I'm starting a timer on you.
7:10, whether he's gonna whether he's
So
gonna
if
quorum or
we're
not.
late, you'll just go, okay, Naval Avenue, it's on consent. You missed it.
I just hit the start button, 10 minutes. Right.
Squeeze right in here.
Oh, this will be another group.
Recording stopped.
I will take my.
You guys made it like this was a big deal operating this thing. It's not that tough. I don't know.
Jeff, how's your charge on your?
Oh, I'm full. You want
Can I
to see
borrow
this?
your
Absolutely,
cord?
yeah.
Oh.
And it's, I stole it from Nick's Chromebook to start with.
Oh, yeah.
Last one.
I was talking to Mike about, like, I wonder if we could change out these units.
Yeah.
To, you know, if you want to see if they just had USB and USB-C,
We could get a lot more.
everything we're plugging in has an adapter on
Yeah.
it.
Recording in progress.
Tonight, everyone knows we have a guest.
So, Ms.
Robert-
Grover, I made a mistake and I didn't have the microphone on, so I'm just gonna read again what this item is. Thank you. So we're at item B6, supplemental agreement number 4 with HDR Engineering Incorporated for the Naval Avenue First Street to 15th Street pedestrian and bicycle enhancement project.
Anyway, so today I would like to introduce my, a guest who is the, consultant, design consultant for the Naval Avenue project, Robert Acevedo, that's with HDR. And I'll turn it over to you,
Well,
Robert.
that's me. I still have an issue where I'm not presenting onto that screen. And F5 does not work.
Come on, ChatGPT.
Hi, Robert.
Alt F5.
Alt F5?
That's what it said.
Alt or
No, I don't know.
Control F5.
Control.
Let's go back to paper.
Saying we can't see the whole, we can see the slides.
Yeah.
We're good.
But I can't advance them.
Oh.
That's the thing is like I can move
That
my
is,
cursor
that's the oddest thing.
and if I could actually touch that screen, I could do it, but yeah, I don't know. So I don't kind of at an impasse.
Oh, something just happened.
Can you go up there, and pull down
Yeah, yeah, it just pulled up. Is there
again?
any,
On top there, up to the upper left.
Oh, no, that's the part of the presentation.
did you tell me you can't go to the slideshow?
I can, but when I click it, it puts the slide on the laptop. So maybe we do your primary monitor.
Yeah.
Oh, switch it maybe to that?
Yeah, yeah. There's so many different toggles.
There, that drop down for primary, is there an option for
Automatic or primary,
No.
either of them.
secondary?
Yeah, of course, we got a whole line up there.
It won't let you slide it off.
Yeah, so we can do it here.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
works. All right, let's make this work.
Sure.
Fortunately. All right, Robert Acevedo, I'm on the new page here. I'm I'm a senior traffic engineer with HDR and the project manager for the design team. Been on this for quite a long time, so it's pretty exciting. I'm also a Bremerton resident, and, raising small kids here, so this is kind of personal to me as well. I want to make sure that we're getting this right, and it's a successful project for the community because that's what we use these facilities. My background started in Portland in 2006, and all I do is multimodal and transit projects. I've done these types of rechannelization projects in Washington, Oregon, California, and Nevada. So I'm really well versed in how these projects go. And the reason I like doing these projects specifically is there's such an impact on communities and the repurposing of these lanes to wider sidewalks, bike lanes. And it's a profound difference that you see. I've done some before and after studies, and it's transformative to these areas, and it makes these things accessible. With that, I'll turn it back over to Vicky to get into the presentation.
All right, thank you, Robert. So on this slide, you can see what our discussion agenda will be for tonight. So again, reminding us we're here for amendment number 4 for the right-of-way phase. And then after that, Robert will talk about the project overview, just to remind us again of the naval project, as well as the goals and objectives of the project. And then we will get into the concerns that were raised at Public Works Committee. And then after that, we'll have our open discussion. And I'm hoping that we can get through the entire presentation and save our questions to the end. We're going to try it. That's our goal. Thank you. Next slide, Roach. So again, we're here for amendment number 4 to the original contract for the right-of-way phase. We were at Public Works Committee in September of last year, and we were at study session in December of last year. So contract modification number 4 is for the right-of-way phase. There's various tasks that are included under this, which is the acquisition. We have a temporary acquisition, we have permanent acquisitions, we have right of entries. Management and administration of the right-of-way process is very, there's a lot of paper process, again, because it's regulated by the federal government. We have to do appraisals, we have to have appraisals reviewed. There's a lot of negotiations that need to be done with the property owners, whether it's for permanent acquisition or temporary. And then there's the relocation services, and then ultimately we have to get the right-of-way certified and approved by WashDOT. I would like to call everyone's attention to the right-of-way needs. I remember the last time I was here, there was some discussion and people wanted exact numbers. There are your exact numbers. I think I was off by 1 probably on each of these, but there are your exact numbers for permanent acquisition and temporary, and then the total number of acquisitions that the right-of-way will be impacting. And this funding amount for this amendment is $1.4 million, which is we have the budget for. And with that, just a little reminder of why we're here. We will turn it over to Robert, start talking.
Thank you. I think everybody's pretty well versed with the Naval Lab project, so I'll blast through this pretty quick. But essentially, it's a very wide existing roadway out there with fairly low volumes, especially for the most part of the day. So the plan is to repurpose that additional capacity with a true channelization, 3-lane cross section, that's the 3 lanes to the center turn lane for the most of the corridor. And then with that, it would widen sidewalks to improve ADA access, make some connectivity connections, and enhance pedestrian crossings. Right now, the existing addition, Naval Ave, serves as kind of a barrier to walking, a very wide street to cross. So having strategically located pedestrian access within this dance crossing will help alleviate that issue. And then also have the bicycle facilities connecting this, really important north-south connector, connecting a lot of the current facilities as well as planned facilities for the city's non-motorized plan. And then overall, it's really promoting safety and for all users and maintaining the access to residents, to businesses, and to others along with other users in the community. All right, project goals. I want to kind of rehash this. It's been in the works for a while. It's really around enhanced mobility, safety, and accessibility along Naval Ave. So we want to repurpose this because there is excessive vehicle capacity there. I think we can use it better. But we also need to maintain it as a complete street for the users. One of the big targets is reducing vehicle speeds. We have several features within the design that account for that. Making sure that we're enhancing the safety to pedestrians by providing them access, making sure that it's ADA accessible, increasing the visibility of providing safe cycling facilities that meet the use and need of the facility, connecting these networks, like I mentioned, and then maintaining access for all. In a nutshell, that's the goals and objectives of the project that have been kind of carried forward at this point. Milestones to date. So this has been in the works for a while. Shane went after and won the WashDOT Bike Ed grant back in 2018, and that started this whole thing off. The design started in 2020, and we've kind of gone through several iterations of this in terms of virtual online open houses. Something kind of happened in 2020. We pivoted with our planned public outreach, went to a virtual online, with virtual online as well as online webinars. And it really kind of set the precedent for how we do some of these online interactions. And we got quite a bit of comment through those. And then we wanted to make sure that we were getting the understanding of all users along the corridor. So we had dedicated stakeholder advisory group meetings. So the SAG group was compiled of all users of the facilities, And we met with them to kind of go through the plan, get their initial feedback, and then touch base with them as we got through some of the preliminary concepts. Went after the PSRC grant. We were unsuccessful for the first one there in December of 2021. And then we went after it again later in 2023, which we were successful and awarded the right-of-way funding for this. Since then, since we had the funding approved, we kept things moving with getting the NEPA approvals and the dates for when those were achieved. And we also got the WashDOT right-of-way approval for the right-of-way grant plan. And those are kind of the milestones that are needed to really move this thing forward to this next phase, which we are targeting to do this amendment. Now the design sits in 90% design. It's a pretty significant layout where we're at. It's captured all the coordination elements to date. And it's really that next step to polishing things and working with all landowners as we move into the right process and spend time. Estimated schedule moving forward. The right-of-way acquisition planned to take 2 years to 30 months. It's a pretty significant effort with the number of parcels and the number of, the acquisition versus TCDs versus full acquisition that requires the landlord and location. So as of right now, in order to hit the 2025, 2026 sci-fi numbers, dates, it's considered a pretty aggressive right-of-way schedule. With being able to move forward quickly, we'll be able to hit these dates and go to add as a target of December of 2026. Now, the reason for 2026 is it falls within the city's overall funding strategy, and it's a competitive window for where we end up seeing a lot of the, good bids coming into the contract. So that's kind of the thinking behind setting some of these dates and schedules. Construction would then be in 2027, 2028. We say that this is estimated because funding for construction is not yet secured. However, based on the work that's been done, the grants that have been awarded to date makes this a very fundable project. So moving forward, we feel pretty enthusiastic that this will be able to meet this tempo. All right, stakeholder input. I want to go through this pretty quickly because this was an important part of making sure that all the input. So we had a pretty robust stakeholder advisory group made up of the school district, the naval base, which is at the southern terminus of the project, Kitsap Transit, WashDOT for concurrence on the SR 304 there at Burwell, and then Kitsap Public Health District, West Sound Cycle Club, and then all the different interworking departments of the city of Millerton. We had a few other out there, but these were main contributors that were there. And then some of these are the feedback and outcomes that came from these coordinations. It was really well received and talked about. Was we want to make sure that this corridor is walkable and accessible for all, especially with the schools that we talked about. The wider sidewalks were kind of pulled forward as yes, this is a very beneficial thing that we want to make sure we have. And then we also want to make that barrier to walking with the installation of our RFPs. So through this, we added additional locations. So now there's 13th, 8th, 10th, and 4th. Probably good with those in order. But those are the locations where we're going to have those protected crossings with the RFPs as well as additional activated street lighting. So those are really important to make sure that we're reducing the barrier to crossing this facility. I'm going to go through quickly. There was a bunch of other stuff that was covered. We had a lot of input from the Farmington School District on how the frontage of their property is going to be, and then concerns with the gate and how it's done. As part of that effort, we had a traffic study done where we looked at gate access and looked at the different variations of how traffic moves through that gate, depending on what vessels they have at port, what their color code for level of security and how that affects their gate processing time. So I think Ned talked to this earlier, is it actually creates a lot of variability in what that queuing requirement is, and then how do we make this work where we're also providing the needed access without blocking some of those key points. So those were all touch points that we went through these SAG meetings and got feedback and concurrence on.
Just real quick, Claire, what is placemaking under school zone improvements?
Yeah, so placemaking is more of like some wider areas, not necessarily needed for minimums or maximums.
Like where kids can get together and hang?
Yeah, it's that, it's, features
Artwork.
there, artwork, it's that, it's kind of create the more.
Make it a
visibility.
place.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because Google doesn't know.
Should.
You would think.
All right, and that's about it. So moving forward. Okay, so just discussion topics of what we want to get into here. These are the bulleted items that came out of Public Works meeting and things that we're going to talk a little more in details here. So consider eliminating right turn pocket. Talk on that. Consideration of right turn on red. Considering moving the bike lane to the curb. I know we've kind of already had a precursor to some of these conversations. So,
There also was shortening up crosswalk lanes at 11th and Naval. It was critical.
That was generated by eliminating the right left turn pockets, right? That's kind of that thing, isn't it?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, if you do a straight and left, yes.
So this is a breakdown of the 3 locations that we have remaining right turn pockets along the border of Burwell, 6th, and 11th. To touch again, I think this was covered in the 6th Street. WashDOT standards for level service B or better, city standards for level C or better. One of the things that WashDOT varied. E. Yeah. Yeah. We should see up there. All right.
Yeah, there are Cs.
So, with having said that, a little bit of breakdown of level service B versus level service E. The D is you're getting that congestion. It's a real sharp peak in your peak period. So you're looking at 15 minutes, 30 minutes of peak congestion, but then it levels out, reduces speed. When you get a level service E is when you start to have unstable. So any kind of small iteration of fender bender or anything that any kind of side friction, those kinds of things, it's going to cause it to fail quite quickly. And that was significant delay. Not only going to block up the main line, but then it clog your connectors. That'll get a little more precedent as we start talking to somebody. So that's kind of the overall definition of what these 2 things mean for generalities. WashDOT standard is level service D. We're currently, for the design, are not meeting that. Level service, they allow a level service E mitigated if you have a reason where you're mitigating the intersection through this, or if there's multimodal benefits from it. So we're already kind of pushed past their limit in order to get the maximum out of some of those additional benefits. One of the differences we'll see from this and some of the stuff done for 6th Street is at the time we were working with the 2040 horizon year. Now the further along, some of the comp plan upgrade, the horizon year is now 2044. So that's why you'll see a little bit significant issues at 6 compared to what we're seeing here. But so the proposed design has shows there in the yellow. And then the no right turn, we're removing those right turn at these 3 locations is shown there in blue. When you look at face value, it doesn't look like it's doing that much of significant impact. But this is also reporting your intersection level of service. And there's a brief discussion about that and I'm so proud Nick nailed it. It doesn't take into account
Actual Nick.
Actual Nick. So it doesn't take into the account of what are you looking at on your approaches, your approach delays, and we break it down in the modeling, looking at your delays and volume to capacity ratios for each movement. So I'll go ahead and skip to the next slide unless you're.
Can you stay on this a minute? Is that supposed to be a C or is it supposed to be a D?
Supposed to be, or it is.
Okay, at 11th.
At 11.
So you designed for a C and no right turn lane is a C.
Correct.
Are you going to talk about that later?
Yep.
Good.
All right, so now that we get in here, we're going to start with Burwell. So this is the southbound direction. One thing on face value, it allows the intersection to lay out pretty well. And at this point, we've gone through some coordination with the development of that corner. And they've coordinated their design for the redevelopment along with their project here. When you look at the level of service, pop back up here, it goes from E to E. Well, E is barely not a D in the proposed design. Whereas the E for no right turn on, remove the right turn is almost an F. You look at kind of the range. And what does that mean is southbound approach queue, right now the design has about 175. And kind of hard to see coloring. But right now, the proposed design.
I know it's weird, isn't it? You see it go behind.
Use your mouse.
Yeah.
Trying to point at the intersection.
Yeah, he's trying to.
There's such a delay from it.
Can do a good
You
wheel
want
of
me to do it
fortune.
manually for you?
Yeah, get a.
Yes,
Get a-
Wheel of Fortune, Vanna
Are
White.
you talking about this right here right now?
No, on the other side. So right here where this is,
Oh, there
so
you go.
this is the southbound direction. This is what we would anticipate the southbound queuing to be during this peak period. About 175 feet. Now, if we remove this right, which doesn't seem like a lot, it's not a bunch of storage. What it does is it actually extends that queue 500 feet all the way back to Shit. Because you're reducing that storage, but you're also now having them to turn in with the lane. So now you don't get the benefit of some of those free rights that you get. And this picture down here in the corner is looking southbound, kind of at that same place where the queuing is. And this is one of those high peak mornings where traffic is stacking up. You notice, and this was part of the justification of the project, is that outside right lane is pretty underutilized because everybody that's accessing the gate stacking up on an inside lane in order to be lined up to go through the gate turnstile or the gate processing. But still, when you get down to the intersection, making that availability for those rights. And it's not as big of an issue in the AM because most of the AM peak is inbound traffic to the base. It's a bigger issue in the PM where there's actually people using that right to go ahead and get out on Burwell.
From where? They're not coming from the base.
They're not coming from the base. No. It's more downtown general traffic. People that are in that area.
So commuters.
People who like to drive at 402.
Yeah. No.
All right, so that's Burwell. Moving up quickly to 6th. 6th is kind of more of the issue, and we talked about this earlier. Is for an intersection like this, there's quite a bit of turning movement, and it's not so much if there's heavy through movement. It's kind of easier to mitigate. Whereas this is kind of all movements are fairly heavy. If you jump back here and get those bigger turn movements, both left turns and right turns. And it's kind of across the board. So it's that.
And that's at peak hour, these
Correct.
turning movements.
Peak hour.
Is that PM peak then for this?
Yeah, PM.
Okay, so 6th Street is like 337 left turners and 200 right turners.
Correct.
On the northbound direction.
Yep.
That's data.
So what that does to the queue is we're already projecting a queue that's going to go several blocks to right about here under the proposed budget. If we get rid of the right turn pocket, the anticipated queue then grows to 875, which isn't realistic because there's not enough storage volume there. So what that does is now you're getting queuing along through Burwell Street where we're backing up this left turn as well as through turn or the through movement here. That's what we call a spillback. And that's where you're now having additional impacts to Burwell and SR 304. And that's a concern. To 11. All right, 11. Similar situation, that right turn has a fairly decent volume with 298 making that right turn. So there are going to be people coming out of the base, out of the local businesses, residents going to hang that right, potentially going up 11 to access Warren in that kind of direction. So what we're looking at here, I'll bounce around a little bit with him. So right now, the proposed plan projects a anticipated queue of 200 feet, which keeps you within that first block. With removing that right turn pocket, you're all over doubling your anticipated queue, and now to be back to 9th Street.
So you could do a straight and left in one lane now and shorten up the crossing. It looks like those numbers are
Yeah,
way less.
The thing with the left though is it may pencil out better in terms of operations, but layout isn't as ideal. If you have the center turn lane, part of it is having that predictable cross section. So if you have a center turn lane and then you're transitioning back to through left at the intersection, it's not as predictable for drivers and it doesn't flow as well, and it creates operational challenges at the intersection. Now you're creating delay in movement.
So maybe does that area actually need a center turn lane? So if you just have two lanes, one going right and one going left and straight, where are people doing left? Why do they need the center turn lane there as they approach, what would that be, 10?
Yeah, so it's to facilitate the movement on 10. And there's a few driveways here, and I believe this is a alleyway that's back into different driveways.
Yeah, but the center turn lane is south of those driveways, right? So it's not going to help them get into that alley or the driveway because there's no center turn lane there. You can't cross 3 lanes to get to an alley.
Well, I guess I'm not understanding where you're coming from.
This area, why do you need a center turn lane there? You could just have it go straight through and you could either do a left or a right. That area is so short anyway, and you've got cars coming up there. I mean, this is not an ideal situation to have a center turn lane that close to a major intersection anyway.
Yeah, typically how it's designed, because that way then you're adding additional storage for that left turn.
Well, yeah, so you get rid of if this is not a turn pocket, right? If this is not a two-way turn pocket, that would be storage for a left and right and straight turn lane. And you wouldn't need to have the intersection so wide. The crosswalk would not have to go across 1, 2, 3, 4 lanes of traffic. It would only have to go across 3.
I'm thinking about signal operation and having a dedicated left turn that's protected versus having a through and left where you have to yield to the oncoming traffic. I don't know if that would impact it, but I would think if you mix left turners and through traffic, then you're having to yield for oncoming.
Isn't that how it is now?
It is, yeah. I
is,
use that intersection a lot. It's the northbound traffic has a straight ahead and a left arrow at once.
In one lane, yeah.
What it also does is now by having that protected left turn, you can then stop that left turn. So if you want to implement an LPI, median pedestrian interval, which we'll talk about that, but along 11th Street, you need to be held of that protected right turn so that you can stop them from turning there. And if you stop them, you still get the benefit of being able to have the through lane go.
Is that big a benefit? I don't know. For the through lane to go through northbound.
It's more the benefit to allow that right turn being through I think the through is a minor movement.
Yeah. And that's why if it's so minor, why can't it be in the same lane as the left turn?
Because it creates kind of not a substandard signal operation.
Huh?
Well, it's a signal operation that's not consistent with how you typically operate signals. So as a driver, you approach a signal, you have anticipation of how the signal functions. Typically, you have a left turn, go through, sometimes go through right.
Right.
So having that consistency throughout the city, allows drivers to be more understanding of how they're supposed to function when they get to those intersections.
But the majority of people using Naval are people going to and from the shipyard, right? Because the peaks versus what the center of the day is. Well,
Quite a bit.
I drive around during the day and there's hardly anybody driving there. So it's basically the, shipyard. So, I mean, I don't see that every signal operates the same predictability in Bremerton.
No.
I mean, look at Warren and 11th and Burwell
High and
and Warren and High and 11th. I mean, they're all different.
So we said we'd consider eliminating right and left turn pockets, and I think that's what we've done. And the impact of that in that evaluation is extended queue length, right?
Correct.
And I'm hearing that if we eliminate and we do a left and through, that it's an awkward signal operation, I think is what you just said. Maybe I didn't
Because-
say that right.
Because now there's a left turn light.
Left turn and straight is one lane.
Not right now.
At Naval, 11th?
Not northbound, but they go on at the same time.
Right, yeah, they go on.
Well, but it is in the southbound though. The southbound is
One lane.
yeah, it's just one lane.
The southbound is
Yeah,
dead.
across the street is the narrow road.
Basically a red light all
Right.
Yeah.
the time.
It is.
It is, right. And it's a yield condition as well.
So based on queue length and signal operation, I think we're not recommending removal of right or left turn lanes at 11. Is that accurate?
Well, and on the southbound side of this intersection on Naval, there's currently 5 lanes. We're taking it down to 4. So essentially reducing pedestrian crossing, providing bike lanes. That's a huge improvement towards the bike perfect, or
The
So I-
project also removes the sight distance constraint there on the corner.
Well, yeah,
that house going.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a
it
given.
improves the signal system, and now it's updating the signal system so that it's modernized and has the ability to do things like LPIs, where it makes up for that wider walking distance by giving them a jump to get them out. That's the biggest thing. You want peds and bikes to get out in front of vehicles so they can see them.
So Robert, can you explain what an LPI is?
Yeah, so
Leading
a leading
pedestrian.
pedestrian interval, and all it is it's a timing function of the intersection. It doesn't require, it's an older intersection and the wiring's bad, programmer's 30 years old, you have to upgrade. But for most of the signals within the city, it doesn't require any additional capital or improvement to the equipment. It's just programming and maybe some software updates. What it does is it gives a timing window where the head signal turns on for walking. So you can walk where it holds the through vehicle. The vehicle has to wait for the ped to get up to a lot of time. Usually that's enough time for them to get halfway out in that first lane. So now they're in that cone of vision.
So one of the biggest objections to the right turn pockets is you're forcing bike riders to ride between 2 lanes. And so we asked, as one of the things is to consider putting the bike lane up against the curb so that bike riders don't have to ride in between 2 active lanes. And I don't see that reflected anywhere.
We get there, right?
Yeah,
There is a slide to address that. So
Okay.
keep going.
Would it be best to hit no rights on red, or do you want to hop
Sure.
down to bike lane on the curb?
Let's do right, no right on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The no right turn on red. I pulled the language from the MUTCD, which is the national guidance on
Yeah,
when to
we
use
know
these
those.
things. Typically, no right turn on red is the mitigating treatment or condition at the intersection that creates a safety.
And that's the intersection that's a C now, right?
This is in general.
Any
In general,
intersection.
how do
Yeah.
we use, as traffic engineers, how do we use right turn on
Yeah.
red?
Yeah.
So within this guidance, you're now providing direction against how a signal system controls traffic. So in order to do that, technically you need to have a traffic study done or an engineering evaluation done that then defines this as a need. And these are the list of warrants that the MUTCD puts out that would then create the condition where a no right on red would be warranted. But in general, this treatment is kind of a way of mitigating an issue that otherwise can't be rectified. So for example, at this location on 11th, southbound, there's no right turn on red sign up there. And that's to mitigate the issue of a sight distance constraint with the location of that building.
But isn't there a sight distance, constraint because of the people barreling eastbound up 11th, up that lined hill? Like if you're heading northbound on.
Yeah, there is a no right on red now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And the
I mean, I know
reason-
there's one southbound and there's one northbound as well.
It's a northbound one for sure.
Okay.
And the reason that's
Working
there is
together.
because of that sight distance issue.
Northbound doesn't have the sight distance, southbound does.
So southbound, yeah, you're correct. So southbound has a no right on red. And it's because of the sight distance issue.
Yeah.
And I think if we pull the crash records for that location, we can see that it has pretty poor compliance for that. So a no right turn on red is not a solution. It's a mitigating measure to help alleviate a poor condition.
So because people
is
don't follow the law, we shouldn't put them up.
But it's not a law.
Well, it's a prohibition. When you have a white background on the sign, it means it's
It-
prohibited, right?
It's a regulatory sign.
Right. So because
By
people
going
don't
through-
follow the regulation, we shouldn't use that? I don't understand that.
People drove safely, we wouldn't need a lot of things.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can't build because if you're a drunk driver, which is BS, we can't put speed humps in because of drunk drivers, The question is he's saying that the crash data says that at 11th and Naval, people aren't complying anyway with the no right turn on red, which means, so that means we don't put it in?
Crash data says that they're not complying with no right on red. Is that what we're saying?
That's what you said.
We're not saying that. We're saying that we could if we were to review it. Because I've personally seen 3 crashes there because of that situation.
Yeah, I didn't think that's what you were
I think
saying.
historically, this isn't seen as a well compliant process or
Well, it's-
function. And that's why I've got down here.
We have 2
Blank
traffic cops and none of them, all they do is investigate.
Well, the blank out sign is something that WashDOT's at locations where they meet these warrants. They've gone from using a no turn on red sign to be more active blank out signs because it creates more compliance than the sign does, and it gives them the functionality to turn on and off their.
But Robert, I think what you're trying to say is that if these are to be put in, if they meet the warrants in the MUTCD, that there sometimes can be a compliance issue with drivers complying with this. And that's just something to be aware of. Right. Okay.
So we know that on the southbound, we have inadequate sight distance, but on the northbound, if you take a free right on red, people are probably driving a little faster than maybe they should.
There's no turn on red going northbound. And I think the reason it's there is because it's really a right angle. There's no curve. So like you have to pull out, and those people are coming up that hill. So it's a sight distance, it's a maneuverability.
Probably speed related, there's a conflict there.
Well, we
So
should keep those hard angles at intersections to keep people going slow.
I'd also like to add that I was noticing this as I was driving here tonight, that this white sign, you can't see it at all. I mean, I know it's there. So, but I can see why you'd get greater compliance with this illuminated thing, because after dark.
So I actually put in a no turn on red sign southbound on Naval at that intersection. And the purpose for that was because of the accident data was able to get us underneath the warrant and it warranted it there, because of the site distance for that building on the corner.
That's the corner where the woman with kids.
Right, yeah, it's true.
But generally speaking, we look at warrants to install these. We don't get them in willy-nilly because they impact the signal operation. And these are the warrants that we look at if we're gonna look at a no right turn on red.
But then if we have an exclusive pedestrian phase, like you're saying, we would have the option of, then you can put in the right turn on the sign.
If we have an
we have-
exclusive phase, then what's gonna happen is you're gonna have a red ball at the intersection, prohibiting, movement there, right?
LPI doesn't account for exclusive pedestrian phase. An exclusive pedestrian phase would be like a pet scramble. You're shutting down the entire intersection and all pets can go any direction. That's an exclusive pet phase.
LPI is just like 10 seconds of lead to get them out crossing at a.
Inside distance. Yeah.
So I think the takeaway on this one is, we took a look at, we have these warrants that we need to comply with to be able to put in the sign. We haven't done the engineering evaluation to do it and can. We did a cursory review of all these warrants to see if these intersections would be able to warrant a no turn on red. And we didn't think that they would based off of a cursory review. But we're more than happy to take a look at it and do an engineering evaluation to see if we can do that.
And it would be based on the warrants.
Right.
Or the federal government changing the law.
Right.
So for the purpose of this agenda bill item, we're trying to hopefully get this contract approved for the right-of-way acquisition stage. Do we need to have the discussion on right turn on red tonight on that?
Well, so a lot of things have been thrown out and we're trying to, I would say no, other than like, if this can be tabled and can wait for a federal mandate or a citywide mandate, great. If you want us to implement no right turn on red with this project, what we're saying is it's going to be based on warrants from the MUTCD. So we would do this warrant analysis and whatever that shows is appropriate is what we would recommend.
Right, would that increase the cost of the contract to do this? Are you doing it in-house or?
Well, it's my understanding we're not, I don't think we're worried about increasing the cost of the contract. I get the sense that we're trying to make sure we pin down what the design and that we're holding up this amendment to make sure that whatever the design is that we move forward, that this council is comfortable with it. And Jeff, I'm kind of paraphrasing you.
Yeah.
So why don't you help me out here and like actually say what I meant?
No, I think the discussion we had on Public Works was to take a step back too. And again, this happened, a lot happened in COVID and design, and some things were changed. And I think one is just getting the understanding of what is the current design on Naval, because we have the 200-page engineering document, which I think it's great to put that out there because people who want to dig in can dig in. But we didn't have a really up-to-date kind of cartoon level, high level version. That was one. And then two, the questions were coming from the community and others about all the options possible. And so for me, that was just let's pause for a second if we can, so we can really understand this and dig in, which I appreciate you all doing.
And we got the roll plot ready. So you'll be
awesome.
seeing it in the next
Thank you,
day
roll
or
plot.
so.
Okay.
So should we move on from no right turn on red?
Well, I just wanted to give Michael some background on what we discussed in Public Works. We had talked about, for this amendment to the contract, to asking them to pause on some of the right-of-way acquisitions at intersections where it didn't appear to us that we needed that much new right-of-way for additional lanes.
Okay. The idea of the compromise that the work could continue while we just took a little bit more to do our.
Just at certain
get up to
certain intersections only.
Okay. So that's what we're gonna try to decide tonight, so we can move forward.
I think what we're trying to bring forward is what we think the right design is and explain, like try to address the things we were asked to consider, which we're trying to do.
Okay.
And like there are definitely considerations for right turn and left turn pockets, and I think we're recommending them with some conviction because we think it's the right thing to do. I know there's other opinions about that. At the end of the day, we would like to bring this right away amendment forward and get it approved and start moving forward with the work because we're comfortable with the design effort that we've done and that we have the right geometrics.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can get there tonight or not. And I guess the alternative at the end of this conversation is we don't agree that you need all those right turn and left turn pockets. And as a council, we don't really want to approve this amendment in full. And so maybe there's that middle ground where we approve what we can, and there's some list of properties in a motion or an agenda bill that says we need to come back to get approval for that. That's not a real efficient way to deliver this project. I'll say that. But
No, but, and it's almost like both sides will be dug in if we can't reach a compromise tonight. So what is the point of this? Because I don't see the other side. I find this frustrating. I know there's people listening. It's like, oh, so here I've got traffic experts. You guys get paid to do this. And you said yourself, I mean, you live in the community, you got kids, you're a bicyclist, you're a pedestrian. And I understand, I respect you guys. Jane, I know you had a background in this. But I'm struggling with this. I'm hearing plausible reasons for why this is designed this way. And then we're getting really into the, I could better term nitty gritty on this and kind of picking apart the thing. And the bottom line, I think Michael said it earlier, is that this is a market improvement over what we have now. It's huge. It's not perfect because we're not starting with a blank straight slate and got 100 feet of space on each side. And so there's going to have to be compromises. So I think if the city tonight explains their reasoning why they did this, which is what they ask, you guys can't just say it has to be perfect. This would be the ideal situation when they say this is why you don't, because you're going to potentially have these huge backups. And to me, to say, well, the heck with it, they can have the backups. That's not like we're going to pay the price in the end. We're going to pay the price. There's going to be lots more people complaining to the city council. And I'm going to hear it from all the bicyclists, but I don't care. We're going to get lots of complaining. Is like, this whole area is congested. What the heck did you do? I'm sorry, I'm saying it. What the heck did you do? You screwed this up. You had professional engineers saying you should do it this way. This is why, but then we're picking this apart. That's what I'm struggling with tonight.
Well,
so I'd like you to just kind of keep that in your mind, and then let's move on to the next one.
Should we move off with this slide? I'll put the no right turn on red for now. Okay, so go ahead.
All right. Bike lane on curve. So one of the comments was, okay, you keep the right turn lane, but then move the bike lane to the curb so that we're removing that mixing zone when you're crossing your bike lane over the vehicle turn lane. This has been shared a couple times tonight. So this is not allowed. We're not allowed to put a bike lane to the right of a right turn lane only if you can provide this setup right here that you see on your screen, where you have a buffered protected bike lane, and you have the signalized the bike signal port, so that you can control it separate from the right turning vehicle. And I wouldn't even say the protection here is important. I would say the buffer, because now you're creating that separation. So these types of treatments that you're seeing being deployed at other communities are more of I would say a cycle track type condition, where now you have a separate facility that's buffered away from the vehicle. A lot of times you're seeing them with parking that's going in the middle of them, and there's very little access. It's through a downtown urban core where maybe every 2 blocks there's an access opening for a parking garage, or along thoroughfares where there's not a lot of access points. So that's really the treatment for this. The way that the project is designed is MACDO's current best practices for through cycle lanes through an intersection, and that puts the bike lane out in the center between the through lane and the right turn lane. Now, we understand, as part of development, we understand that's not for everybody. That's more of an aggressive commuter type person, but we're trying to build this facility to generate mode split, and we want to get people on their bikes commuting. We want to make sure that someone that's an avid biker can actually use the facility and do it pretty quickly. Now, to the part of the design that is the balancing
Avid
act of that is for wider sidewalks. So most of the corridor, especially around the school, has 8-foot sidewalks. Now, with an 8-foot sidewalk, I'd be perfectly happy having my little kids that are learning to bike on a sidewalk. I think everybody else would be as well. And then you have the on-street facility for more of the advanced cyclists that you wouldn't want riding on the sidewalk. And that's kind of NACTO's vision of the layout for the through traffic or the through lane and how the corridor was laid out on the design.
So after you review ASHTO's recommendations, and they had the most up-to-date, thing is it was just published. Because my understanding is they do not recommend doing bike lanes in between 2 lanes. So what are you gonna, that's
the
NACTO.
the better treatment would be like this. In
Well,
order to
that's
do
more
this,
CD.
in order to do this, we need additional space.
There's more right away position that we currently look
Yes.
at.
Yeah, basically it comes down to right of way and then signal operation. You have to have the protected, you have to go outside to the curb plus a buffer. Then you have to have a dedicated bike signal, as I understand it. Otherwise, you need to be between the through lane and the inside of the right turn lane.
So we're rebuilding the signal, right?
We're modifying signal. We're probably doing half measures on. We're trying to achieve full.
So at Sixth Street, what we're doing is we have to relocate 2 poles to get outside, because they're in conflict with the new improvements. And then we're modifying signal heads, on the other 2 poles to be able to accommodate the design.
That's 6, and then at 11th, you're putting in new signal pole. So are you saying that a bike signal is too expensive to add to, they're that expensive that we can?
Extra bike lane.
Well, it's not an extra bike lane. So we're talking about, so 2 feet.
It's more right of way on both sides. We're doing it.
And it's not, I mean, we're already taking right of way. It's not more right of way. Significant impacts to the property. Go back. We're looking at 11th. We're
Mhm.
already close to this corner as we can get. In order to get that additional width.
Okay, so I want to be really clear, we're, the numbers that you're giving us are for what traffic is anticipated to be in 2044, 2040.
For the, the whole level of service conversation and the, growth management, that conversation. It's not just building it for day one construction, but it's also looking into the future through your horizon plan year. Especially for the amount of capital and the investment the city making these facilities, you don't want to go and touch them again for 10, 20 years.
Well, that would be 20 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, now the questions start.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick, the last one is a comment about forward compatibility of the design with the protected bike lane. And when I was looking at this question, it was it depends. Right, all the answer. It depends on the definition of what a protected bike lane is, and it depends on the definition of what forward compatibility is. So, for my understanding, forward compatibility is if there's no additional civil work. Like we're not going to go and reconstruct sidewalks. We're not going to go and resurface any roadway. We're not going to do anything that causes actual construction. It'd be limited to things that we can accomplish with signing, striping, adding some features like candlesticks or spike down type curves, those kind of things. So protected bike lanes, if we were to look at something like the treatment on Washington where we're using candlestick, then yes, we can go through and make some of those additions. If protected lanes are looking for 5-foot bike lanes with that buffer and protection, then no, the design can't do those without significant compromise.
So to make sure the definition, when we say, back to Ned's comment earlier, protected bike lane, that is a definition from NACTO, the buffer plus the minimum width.
I think my understanding of separated and protected is that you have to have a buffer and the bike lane width. And then there's the whole discussion about whether the gutter pan is included or
Okay,
not,
all
right?
that too, yeah.
So there's all of that together. And if we say protected or separated, depending on what your standard is for what that looks like.
Yeah, that's all well.
So we need to be careful of being clear about.
That makes sense. And so what we currently have on Washington, according to NACDA, would not be a technically protected bike lane, but
Nope.
we had some other word of semi-protected.
It would be Bremerton protected.
Bollard.
Bremerton protected. I like that.
So when you're saying forward compatibility, are you saying that at the very least, we can't even have candlesticks on Naval Avenue?
Yeah, the opposite.
No,
We can have, I'm gonna call it bollard. We could have a bollarded bike lane.
But we can't have those 5-foot high concrete things.
no,
And we got to be careful about saying what we're doing. right?
on a bollard.
So saying we can do a treatment that improves it is different than saying it's a protected bike lane.
Yes.
So when we look
Yeah.
at bike level of traffic stroke, and there's the definition of what it means to be a protected or separated bike lane,
Mhm.
you may not be impacting your bike level of traffic stress in the table and by the standard when it's a compromised standard that we're talking about. It's not like we're saying we can't do it. Let's just be clear about understanding what it is we're actually doing.
You don't want to use the wrong term or get the wrong impression.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm making up a new one.
Oh.
Bremerton protected.
You can make it a Washington Avenue type bike lane.
Part of the thing why we're asking for these is, Washington, we only have a few blocks of candlesticks, right? So what happens is people park in it all the time, even though it's illegal for them to park in a marked bike lane. You got a school right there and everybody knows you got crazy parents. They're all driving their kids to school and all of a sudden, if you don't have some protection or they see a bike lane, they could just pull over there if there's not even candlesticks in place.
Amazon will pull over everybody.
Yeah, so that's why I think it's important that, yeah, let them park there.
Yeah.
That's where they should be parking. That's where they park in real cities.
Seeing on Sixth, there's been they park in the lane, so
I've seen that too.
they'd be comfortable parking in the center currently. Yeah, I've seen that as well.
On Kitsap Way, they park in the bike lane.
Yep. Because there's nothing to stop them.
There's a whole area with crosshatching where they're supposed to be parking.
Mhm.
Well, that's the reason why we put these in right here is because we had people parking in this bike lane.
Yeah.
And this is the best way that we could.
So you are
mitigate
going
that.
to do this because you're saying forward compatibility. Are you saying that you're going to put these in on the
I think
Naval Avenue
question at
project?
Public Works Committee from Jeff was, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we're considering that
Right.
it could be forward compatible. But forward compatible, what is that? How do you define that? To what, right?
Right.
So is it forward compatible to protected bike lanes without construction? No, it is not. Right, but is it forward compatible to maybe adding some candlesticks at some point? I think, yes, it probably is.
Given that we're 90% is out of.
Is that accurate to what we talked about? versus
Yes,
what
that
we're trying
answers
to-
my question that I had.
Do we need to spend more time on this?
It doesn't really answer mine. He was
Okay.
talking about a higher level of legal protection. My questions were, can we at least do this on Naval
Right now.
right now? When we do the project, can we do that?
I guess I'm looking at U2, U3, sorry, I'm gonna leave you out.
Can you?
So certainly we can go and put added features to it if we go to final design. My concern would be as we've gone through this process, not having it. I think adding simple, not changing the actual geometry of the bike lane, adding simple candlesticks, it isn't a huge deal, but we might want to at least, present that as an option. We are scheduled to have one follow-up, public open house.
In
with this
person,
project.
in person.
Yay.
So that would be an option to take that to them so that we're actually getting input with it.
And so just to be clear on this, I mean, the Washington Avenue, the Bremerton standard here is something that we can't do. We have a 5-foot bike lane. It's easy for us to plop those in there, and put them in there as part of the job. We don't have construction funding. We have to find that anyway. That's something that we can't do. We have the same issue with 6th Street, that we have here with the density of the driveways, right? So, it could be that you get out there and you have one candlestick and 50 feet away, you have another one, right? I mean, that's, we
Can-
haven't.
Can we
gone-
put them on the line instead of inside the line?
We can, and so it was the developer who did that and,
I think as part of this, we'd want to develop a standard.
Yeah. Like actually give 5 full feet.
So the reason why we did this here just inside the line is because at certain periods of time, we have to go through and maintain this edge stripe because it wears away over time.
You guys
this,
don't have a striper.
right, but we hire one.
But imagine having to stop and
those
start
things
and
don't
get back
adhere
in
to
every
the
candlestick and get that white
Right.
stripe. So now you can go spray that white line and just drive down that lane and you can spray the whole thing and be done.
Right.
In 10 minutes or 15 minutes, as opposed to trying to catch the line with the candlesticks in the middle of it.
And the other issue that we had here is that we had thermoplastic here, which is a certain type of striping, and so there's really difficult adhesion that we would have with candlesticks here on this. So it's just some considerations that we would need to consider as we're looking at this. But we can definitely put them inside the line. That's something that we can do as part of this.
Sounds like we have a compromise event here. You're gonna get candlesticks possibly.
Maybe.
Help me out here, and I like this idea. I'm not an avid bicyclist, but I do think that's important. I really do. Just to show, we had this earlier discussion where people have a sense, cars know they can't park. That was your main deal earlier this year. These cars are parking here, so that helps avoid that. Just on the practicality, I know we're in a climate that doesn't always have snow, but I've seen it here where we've had lots of snow. What do you do with the plows when you have a situation like that? Have you thought that one through? Because
We're concerned about it.
if you plow enough snow, you could probably blow all those candlesticks out too, because snow's gonna go
They
go
could
that
be
way.
damaged, they could get popped off. We could be in a situation where we're doing a lot of candlestick replacement. But, we're gonna learn about it, I guess.
Okay.
It's not like we have it all over the city and we've been doing it for 10 years. We have one
got it.
place where we've done it recently and we haven't had a horrendous snow event where we've plowed
Yeah.
in Washington since we've done it. It'd be kind of nice if we had, I don't know, 18 inches of snow, or maybe not.
We get
But having said that, they're in other.
3 days a
Western
year.
Washington, so there's gotta be,
Yeah.
there's gotta be a way. So I just, okay.
Personally, going back to where you put the candlesticks, I think it looks better if it's on the line, but from a maintenance and going back and fixing it, later and adhesion, I understand why that isn't that way. So that helps explain.
Maybe you just have to let the thermo cure more and then you can put them on.
Yeah, I don't
And
know.
then you'll never be repainting it anyway.
Okay.
We can go on to their following something over.
Hey, so Ned, where are we at? Or whoever's orchestrating this big deal here? So, is it,
Well, I think what we heard about protected bike lanes, protected is that we'd like to see additional measures. And I think here's what I would say to that. As long as we're not adding right of way, we're not changing geometry and channelization, and it's not like a redesign of the project. I think that is a simple thing to incorporate. And even if you include it as an add alternate in the bid, where the contractor can bid it, and then we find out if we have enough money or not, and maybe it's not part of the contract if we're out of money.
right, like in the other option earlier today was another $280,000. So this may be something that council may have to come up with additional
And
money.
we don't have construction money or the final estimate of cost yet. So when we go for the, if we include it in the grant, we have requests, we have a good chance of getting that money. I think the hard part is changing the design to the point where we're moving curb, we're moving striping, we're increasing right of way or decreasing right of way. Like we've done a lot of work to get through an environmental process where you define the boundaries and then you work within that. So any of those changes could potentially undo some of the work that we've already done to get to where we are. And we need to be careful about that. So Shane, did I say that right?
Yeah, yeah, we did.
All right.
This was the one where the SEPA approval was dependent on your performing a herpetological study, was it not?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
City internal process.
Yeah.
And you managed to find no rare or endangered snakes along the stretch
We
of
don't
naval?
have-
No.
That's good.
We do have some contaminated soil.
Yeah, yeah, well, that we do.
As long as it's not a
I
dump.
got the sense we wanted to move on from this slide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, excellent.
Look at that.
No question?
No, so the
Thanks, everybody.
questions are, I guess, to the council, we have an agenda item in front of us. Of course, we don't vote until next week. But are you guys satisfied with this agenda bill? Do you want to discuss it more?
So my suggestion, I'm gonna throw this out there, is put it on general business, right? Because one of the reasons I really wanted to say pause, because I saw a number of the community surprised, right? That, you know, for whatever reason. And so, I think I've gotten a good answer on the outside bike lane. We just don't have the width. We can't do it. I really appreciate the baller discussion and the turn pockets. I wish there was another way to do them, but that seems to be the standard. So, but I'd say put it on general, have a good presentation for the public and for folks watching who's paying attention to the discussion. If there's some alternative we did not cover or discuss tonight or wasn't presented or something that we haven't examined, then come with that. If we find something compelling, we can, postpone it another 2 weeks.
Well, to be
But
clear,
I think, otherwise, I think we've covered the bases here.
this item is the amendment. It's not the design.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily comfortable saying, hey, we're gonna bring a whole discussion on general business and open it up to the public for public discussion for the whole line. When this item that we're bringing forward is trying to get an amendment to HDR's contract so that we can start the right
Fair
of
enough.
way phase.
When,
Well, they're gonna come anyway,
Well,
and
that's
they're gonna
okay.
talk.
I'm more talking about the presentation you just described. We're gonna come give you a presentation on a contract amendment for right of way phase. That's what you're gonna get.
I feel like the more communication we can clear up now early, right, obviously, the
Yeah.
better, which is another reason we just want a quick pause over the holidays. So
Yeah, no worries. I see your point, Jeff, and I agree with letting everybody know. But I got a feeling that the people that are gonna comment are watching this tonight or will be watching in the next couple days. And your presentation, this was excellent, telling us, you guys addressed, in my opinion, from what I could tell, the comments, you guys addressed the concerns. You explained to the council. The question is, and the reason why we're going over this, I understand this this task is for right-of-way acquisition, but you don't want to go through right-of-way acquisition if the council is not going to approve this final design because they don't have to do it. So I get that. So really, this presentation tonight is for council to be comfortable with this design. So you can go ahead and do your right-of-way acquisition. We're all clear on that. So that's the question tonight. It's not asking you which way you're going to vote on the contract. Contract is pretty simple. You're gonna have to do right-of-way acquisition. Might as well get it done. Are you guys comfortable with the design, or Jeff, are you telling me you need more time?
well, for any folks listening, again, I can send something in. For right now, I'm comfortable that the right-of-way acquisition is sufficient. But to go back to it, what's the next step in this project? So if we approve the full contract and the full right-of-way acquisition,
We're gonna start inquiring right away.
yeah. And then when is that open house for finalizing the design? I mean, 'cause we're 90% already.
So we plan to do it, actually early in this year. We need the money. We need that contract so we can do it. So we still plan to do it fairly early in the year. And I'm gonna tell you what the point or the purpose that my understanding is why we're gonna have it. We need to invite the people who live along the corridor to understand how the right of way is going to impact them. And then we also wanted to show the public that, hey, we've heard your request to extend the bike lanes north of 11th. Here is the design. So it's kind of a twofold open house. Now, if you guys feel we need to three-prong it, there's something else, we can do that as well.
But it's not like, hey, we're bringing this to the public at 100% or 90%, asking for you to redesign the
Oh,
project.
right, that's not
That
it.
is not what it
Got
is.
it.
It is like, hey, here's where we are, and here's another opportunity for you to be informed about our project. So,
I think one thing that would be helpful for you to add to this presentation, you checked the boxes that certain things have been done. If you can put some dates in, like when was the 60% plan
that
completed?
slide that had all of the, how did we get here slide?
Yeah, it didn't have dates.
Milestone, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah, it didn't have it had dates for, all the milestones, but it didn't include like 30, 60. It just said.
You put that in
But
now,
just,
Robert?
we don't intend to bring this presentation as a general business item to bring it to
That's
council.
fine. Just to remind you.
Right, that makes
No, but
sense to
you're-
everybody, right?
But it should be something that put on the website so the public can look at it.
I don't necessarily have a problem with posting it to the website
Right.
as
But I'd
information.
like to see the dates, the 30 and 60%.
Sure.
So you're saying spring open house.
They follow along
Maybe.
with the set. So we kind of have a way of doing it. Do develop design, work through it with the city, go to the public for the virtual open house to get, some of their thoughts before the
What-
design started. Then we had the SAG meeting. So right between that is when we would have
There are dates on
the
there.
30% design. Yes, there's dates on here. It doesn't call out.
But the 30 and 60 is
Is
not
what
on
she
here.
has
And
said.
I think,
Okay.
Jane, are you asking to update this slide for the 30 and 60 design milestones and we can post this?
Yeah,
to
the dates,
website?
because
Yeah.
I'm getting
Okay.
a lot of feedback that people claim they never saw a 60% plan, that it wasn't made available to the public. So I just want to be able to say, well, on this date,
Not called 60% because that plan's been on the
The
website.
exhibit
for-
that's on there right now, that's 60%.
I thought you had 90% on now.
No, we don't have it.
We have
We have
a
90%
90% plan.
plan, but this is a 60% exhibit. So it's like a roll plot that shows the entire corridor.
So it's not really a plan, it's a artist rendering.
No,
It's AutoCAD. We call them roll plots.
He's gonna show you.
Yeah, show them the 90% one. This is the one that we'll have for you.
So this is a 60% exhibit that we prepared specifically for the public because it's not engineering plans, which a lot of people
Navigate.
can't navigate and don't understand. So we prepared something specifically for the public that they could use.
Okay, well,
Here it comes, there it is.
yeah. So there's a 60% roll plot out there that shows the alignment. And this is the updated with the new design. And the biggest difference is going to be the extension.
Yeah.
Bike lanes north of 11.
So when was this posted to the website?
It's not
Not yet, it's not.
Well,
Okay.
then 90%.
When was council
is-
notified that it was
Right now.
available on the
Hang on a
website?
second, the 60% has been on for a very long time.
60%?
The
The
90.
60% has been on.
That's what I'm asking.
We have something on the website for
We do.
60%.
on the page.
And it's a roll plot like this.
Yes.
For 60%. And when was it posted?
In 2022.
2022, we posted a document like this that shows the 60% design roll plot with all the channelization and the planned bike lanes since 2022. Now we've just recently posted the actual construction documents, the 90%, right? And now we're also going to post this roll plot, which is the 90%, which is not on the website right now.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does,
Okay,
it
all right,
totally,
good.
it totally.
All very Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
You see how I called you by your right name?
I know, you're the first one tonight.
I called you by your name.
So the thing is, if something is posted to the website and council doesn't know about it, and the public doesn't know about it, then it's like that tree that falls in the forest.
Right.
So this was something that, back in 2022, when I was on the Public Works Committee, and 23, this was something that kept coming up, was like, we really want to know, we don't want to see drafts, but once something's ready for the public, council really should be notified so that we can, make it available to the public so that you're not getting whip smacked. I know that's not a word. At, but you know,
I bet you could spell it though.
I could.
I can.
At 90%.
So we
that
don't have
this
that
input
process
comes-
in place. I understand what you're saying, and I
Yeah.
understand the frustration with it. And I know we've taken some criticism for unceremoniously putting these on the website. But honestly, we need some help from IT, I think, and our web manager to figure out how we, like, it should be kind of an automated process. You make a change, you post it, and then there's like the
Notification.
web
or
server or
email.
whatever, your listserv.
Yeah.
The listserv that gets notified of the change.
Well,
We
how
don't
can
have
we help
that.
you develop that?
How
How can we be of use?
I think it's gonna take a little time, is all I can tell you. I don't think there's anything you can do. I think we're aware of it, and I think it's something that hasn't been a high priority. Because honestly, we've been spending a lot of time trying to sort out like Sixth Street and Naval right now, so.
Okay, so we're at general business for item B6 on Wednesday. We're not getting this full presentation we got last night. Vicky, you'll be, I think, be
I will
providing
be.
a summary of what's on this agenda, Bill, as far as amending the contract for right-of-way acquisition.
And then I would say, just like we would like to get this done, if this gets stuck and the only way to get it through is some middle ground process where we hold something up, which I really hope we don't do. Like, it's not gonna be helpful if we do that. Then we're not planning on preparing the alternate motion and agenda bill that covers the ground of what that would look like. So if you think that's something that you need in your hip pocket, who am I looking at? Right? I'd be bringing it and working that through and ready to present that to the fellow council members to try to see if that's something that we need to do. But we're gonna bring this forward 100% and look for council approval. That's where I think we're at.
Yeah, I'll say a lot. You've addressed my concerns. I feel much more educated than I was a month ago. Again, I never know what I might hear from somebody, right? As Eric always says, there's the right to change my mind.
Sure.
But
okay,
yeah,
that's our plan.
But it's good to know that in the springish, we'll have a public meeting. People can still get input in first meeting.
In person.
And we're looking to do 100% design by.
When you say people can give input, this is
I know.
informing
Right.
them.
It,
Of
okay.
impact
Yeah,
from
yeah,
right
So, thank you.
away.
Yep.
yeah.
But 100% design in.
Yeah.
When,
Depend on the right of way process.
Yeah.
This is the.
like a year, at least a year plus out.
The intent of this is, as you go through the negotiations, there are gonna be some, discussion of how those tie-in points are. So all that is gonna be built into that final design package.
What
So,
people want. and
yeah,
that kind of
I think
stuff
one of the
to
slides had
negotiate.
showing how like the stairs were built out over the existing sidewalk. So I can work with the property owners to figure out how we had that property got in. All that kind of stuff get brought in. So,
And on the roll plot Robert put on there, you'll see in the legend, you'll be able to see what's permanent and temporary acquisitions as well.
Great.
Okay.
to go on here.
I have one final question. You talked about tenant and landlord dislocation and then relocation, displacement and relocation, and that's just the place at 11th and Naval,
That's
right?
correct.
Oh, okay. Let's check.
I hope that's true.
Now, it's true.
Okay, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
You don't
Okay.
want to stick around for the next hour and a half?
Oh, no.
Hey, what's wrong?
Good
I
night.
gotta talk about the
Night.
public works committee.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll be.
Shane, Ned, Vicky, thank you.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Esposito, thank
that concludes agenda bill briefings. Now we're gonna go to general council business. First item up is a briefing on the ordinance to modify rules for safe off-street parking. We have Councilmember Revelowski, so go ahead, Jane.
So I just emailed to each of your email addresses a draft letter. Anna, Jennifer and I met with Kylie to discuss how we can gauge interest in the faith community to possibly host 5 to 6 vehicles an evening. These would be people without permanent homes who are currently living in their cars, not RVs. And we're trying to find out if Faith Community is even interested in hosting. I talked with Anton from Northwest Hospitality, who's been trying to get a larger scale safe parking project and hasn't had any luck with that in the city. I talked with Chief Wolf, and he thought he would have no problem with having 5 to 6 vehicles spread out at different locations throughout the city. That way there wouldn't be any neighborhood uproar, and it would be easier for them to manage. And we want to make it very minimal requirements, like you have a trash can and toilet facilities, and that would either them using the church's bathroom and sink, or a portable toilet with a portable sink attachment.
With a contract.
Yeah, to keep it clean. So I prepared a draft letter for Eric's signature, if it's something that you would like sent out to the faith community to gauge their interest.
Has everybody had a chance to look at the letter? I do have copies.
Okay, I just emailed it to everybody too.
And this would remove the requirement to put up the chain link fence and to establish a safety plan. yada,
Right.
yada. So it's way less onerous.
Right. Because we do have a very complicated way of them doing it now, and none of the churches have chosen to take that route.
Well, the Unitarian for a while, right?
They're not in the city.
Oh, right, you keep telling me that and I keep forgetting.
Essentially, we'd be extending our current process for allowing churches to do temporary camping that we've had on the books for a long time to vehicles. I mean, so very analogous.
Yes.
Yeah.
But with less rules.
Gotcha.
Okay. First of all, I want to say I have no problem if the council wants me to sign a letter to reach out to the faith community. I do have a question whether our current ordinance as written of the special development code that allows this is actually prohibiting faith member community from doing this. So I would suggest after we run this letter by Kylie, our legal counsel, to change the wording of the letter to say whatever our code allows. We're inquiring why basically there is no safe parking locations in the city. Is there anything on our books that's prohibiting you from doing so? Because I think I'm going back a couple of years, and this the church that my wife goes to, I go to a couple times a year. But Christmas and Easter. You know the deal, the husband contract. Okay, so now I'm going to get in trouble. They were going to do some outreach, and I recall that the church ended up calling their insurance agent and finding out, can we do this? And the insurance company's like, you're not covered for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's a universal concern. So I'm good with this. I'm good with reaching out to the community again after running by council, but maybe not kind of just ask, is there anything in our books that's precluding you from doing this? Instead of encouraging them, hey, you need to do this, or not even, I don't even think it quite says that, but basically, because I think you can do it now. I think you can do it now.
No, they have to have a safety plan, a security plan. They have to have it fenced. They can only have it for a certain amount of time.
Right. It doesn't allow like permanent camping on the parking lots.
Right. Not.
Now, are you
no
suggesting that
tent
we
camp.
do that? We do have, are you suggesting that we allow campers and all that stuff?
No, just cars, no RVs, no tents.
So what is a Sprinter van?
And at night only, like just for the evening, and then they would drive away.
Well, they could decide though.
True.
That's the facilities decision.
Is there a committee that we could work this through?
Public safety, maybe?
Kylie, can you give us some guidance on this? So I'm not,
We have a public safety meeting next month. So you're asking great questions, and I think that's probably what would come up in the stuff that we talked about. I don't know that as it is right now, if a church parking lot was allowing overnight parking at their facility, that would probably fall within what they have a parking lot for.
Mm-hmm.
Is be probably treated differently if it were tent, if it were an RV lot and people are residing there. I see this really different. There's really no difference from someone sleeping there in the day or sleeping there at night. Sort of what I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know that the code that you're talking about, the special development standard, would necessarily prohibit exactly what you're talking about. So
Well, yeah, I don't think it,
you don't think it does either?
I think that
Maybe the perception
it
of
gives
it.
a perception by
Right, and
having
maybe
that
might be
there's
a
too many rules
right.
for them
and
to
so
do it. It's like,
it
do
might
they
be-
even need, do we need to even be involved?
We might not. And
I
so
don't
maybe
think so.
finding out what the interest level is for the faith-based, who wants to do this,
Mm,
and are we in their way or are we not? And it probably depends on what they want to do in the scope, right?
Yeah,
Like
you
if
would-
they want 50 RVs,
Yeah.
maybe that's where those development standards come into play. If it's 5 cars parking overnight in their parking lot, maybe there's nothing standing in the way of them doing
Providing
that, right?
XYZ on-site services or
Or,
not.
or not
yeah.
even, they can provide what they're
whatever they want,
what
yeah.
they want. And so maybe we're not, I don't think, my understanding is you want to make sure that we don't have regulations in place that are standing in the way.
Mhm.
And we might not have any, but it probably depends on what it is they want to do.
I think it's never necessarily helpful to play what if. Like if we get a proposal from a potential site, it's very happy to review them.
See,
But why do they have to go through you?
Well, they might not. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. A lot of people do stuff and then we find out about it.
Right.
And then if it gets to be a problem, we find out about it. We see if there's a code. But I think what I'm hearing though is that there's a perception that people do have to go through it.
Mhm.
Or through DCD for under the temporary. And so depending on what that is, maybe they do or maybe they don't. They can certainly call now. We haven't even had any inquiries. And so maybe that would be the
I
question.
I never called to ask if I need a permit to do something either. Which I think probably half the people in the city do and half don't.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying is like right now, I think it seems like there might be some interest in this. Or maybe there's not. I guess we'll find out. But the idea was that we'd send a letter to find out what the interest is
Mm-hmm.
in doing.
But I like Eric's idea of rewording it. It's like, is there anything we're doing that
Yeah,
makes
no, I
it
think that-
difficult?
and I don't even know if it needs to go to the committee. If you guys are okay with it, I can work with Kylie. I understand your intent.
Mhm.
And we'll just do it that way. And then I'll share it with you all guys and then I'll sign.
Okay.
Sounds great.
That
That
sounds
sounds
great.
good.
Yeah. And then then we will use that as feedback and move forward from there.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe
Good.
it's that. Maybe the answer is if there's people out there who are interested, we don't have code that prohibits it. And so
Yeah.
go forth and do what you want to do.
Okay. Well, that didn't take as long as I thought. My wife was like, how much longer? And I said, well, I'm sorry, it's going to be more than half an hour. So, however, are now going to Public Works Committee briefings. of all the-
Well,
Did you guys talk about naval or SIG?
and that was all we talked about. And prior to the meeting, which was the day that I was getting incredibly ill, I had a very long conversation with Ned prior. And he thought we were going to talk about different things. And I told him, no, this is what we wanted to talk about. So Jeff, Denise, and I brought up concerns that we personally had and that we had heard from the community about both the Naval and 6th Street plans. And he brought Nick and Gunnar to the meeting, and Tom was there. And basically, they just listened to what our concerns were and they addressed most of them this evening. So,
Okay.
Yeah, really productive and.
Yeah.
I mean, I just say out loud, I think that these discussions are great because this is a really constantly evolving topic and we're seeing things built, 5, 10 years ago that may be out of standard practice now. And so I think everyone's on the same page of like, let's spend the time early as possible to make sure that we know we're doing the stuff that's most up to date that has consensus. So appreciate the staff.
Just because it's a new year now, any progress on the investigative study for speed bumps on Snyder Avenue?
no,
Okay.
sorry.
Well,
We're waiting for a response from staff. So that did not come up at our December. It was just Naval and Sixth.
Right.
We didn't even talk about any utility stuff.
Regional and other committee board meetings.
a really interesting Kitsap Transit meeting that I thought and think. Where Kitsap Transit is spending like 197K to complete a feasibility study or a design feasibility study for storing access buses at the Gateway Park and Ride. I said, this is part of our whole district center concept, and Gateway Park and Ride is well within the Charleston district center. And the whole county is pushing for Bremerton to be the dense residential urban thing and, you know, save rural areas for elsewhere. And there was some support on the Kitsap Transit Board for this position, but there was also the feeling that even though it said in black and white that this was to find out how to affect zoning changes, among other things, in the city of Bremerton to allow for the storage of access buses. So here's why I'm bringing this to you. It's not just a rant. I said, I don't think city council would be in support of zoning changes to turn Gateway Park and Ride into an access storage location. So I'm going to you guys. Am I wrong on this?
You're not wrong.
Okay.
At least from me.
Does our zoning specifically prohibit long-term parking versus active use?
Well, it wouldn't be long-term parking, or it would be like
Storage,
parking at night, coming back out, parking, you know. So do you think that that would enhance the quality of the Charleston District Center?
Let's see if council even has any jurisdiction or venue on this. Garrett, were you overhearing the conversation? Do you know about the gateway? Is that an allowed use right now to store buses? Actually, they use that right now for.
We went through this with Kitsap Transit previously and said that would not be an allowed use.
Okay.
So it sounds like they're interested in
Okay. Yeah. So therefore, if you correct me if I'm wrong, this is always one of those gray areas. If it's quasi judicial, we shouldn't be talking about it in a council meeting, not on certain things. So am I on the right track there, or we can talk about this tonight?
There's not an application.
No, there's no application.
Okay, so then we can talk about the concept.
The transit oriented development. So they're trying to shoehorn in a transit benefit, which could be some hybrid of storage. And we don't know whatever it could be, overnight, drop off that night, pick up that morning from the same. And then with a affordable housing component.
Oh, I see. Yeah, sure.
So right now there's that. And
Gotcha.
it didn't work the first time, they proposed it. It was too heavy on storage and those type of things. So, yeah, it's the federal money's being allocated for transit to spend. And, I can jump in and say that I supported Councilor Mockler when he said this ultimately will be the council's decision.
Okay.
But I was saying that transit had a vision for the property and is not realized. Then there's a lot of value market value, and if we could
Mhm.
figure out what would the market return on the property. You know, would that be granted if they sold? And so that's a little bit ahead of their thought process, obviously. They just want to get this study out there to see what it produces. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you said they're doing a study now? I'm sorry. I missed
Yeah,
the
no,
first
no, they're
part.
doing a design feasibility study, and you're quite right, Mayor, there was a lot of talk about how this might be affordable housing or residential housing. There's nothing in black and white, there's nothing in the contract that got bid on about that. So I just giving you guys a heads up and
Yeah.
just making sure I'm not speaking out of turn in general, not so excited about vehicle.
So you're saying,
storage at Gateway. Okay.
so you're saying the contract said to look at the feasibility of storing vehicles, and the contract didn't say about looking into housing? It was just a
I
discussion.
can just throw in a comment, I don't know, what's that, because I feel like they've, made changes to how they're using that property already that I'm not sure, they went through proper permitting. And, you know, we're trying to revitalize the Callow area and have a place that big just used. You know, they've basically eliminated the retail in there and changed it to warehouse.
Yep.
So I'm glad we just need to follow the rules.
So here's the summary statement. I hadn't realized all of that. In 22, Kitsap Transit completed the yada yada feasibility study. The study determined that more work is needed to allow for the storage and operation of access service buses on the site. This study will work towards implementation of needed zoning changes, design feasibility, and future of the Gateway Center for access operations and other uses on the site. And then here's all the funding. So that's it. That's what in black and white the study is for. If it decides to investigate housing or market,
Should be fun.
Well, it doesn't,
the
But that's
Federal
not a bus
Surface
lot.
Transportation Block Grant Program, awarded by the Puget Sound Regional, all right, you wanted all of it? Yeah, okay, so
Okay.
that was it. I mean, everything else that happened at Kitsap Transit, there was a long discussion about making buses fare free. And it was a very interesting discussion, but not so interesting that at 8:48 at night, I want to give you all the blow by blow.
Anyone else, regional committee? I'll just real quickly say that, Mayor Wheeler and I were on the 911 CENTCOM board meeting. They meet monthly now, before it was quarterly.
Now it's monthly.
They do give you a free sandwich though, so you got
It
that.
looked good.
It was good. Oh, you were there before for the kids app and saw the eats coming. Okay, some housekeeping items. February 8th is our council retreat. The other 2 weekends, I'm sorry, Michael, I know you mentioned, but that's the day it's gonna be at Gold Mountain. And we're all good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, there's two other things I'm asking the council, let me start with. So I've done this job before and I really, sometimes because we only meet every 2 weeks for study session, I want to get things in the pipeline before it gets to count. So one thing I'd like to do is Lori's position. I'd like to have an ad hoc committee with myself and 2 other council members. It will go through the job description, we'll review it, come up with a draft, then we'll present it to the full council in the study session, hopefully approve it, and then get this job posted.
I'd like to be on that ad hoc committee. I've talked to Charlotte about job
Okay.
descriptions. I've taken 2 webinars in training for
Okay.
like how to do job descriptions. I'd like to be on it.
Okay, I'm open to that, but if anyone else is interested, you don't have to tell me now, just shoot me an email, I won't respond, we won't be violating, someone says, why won't Eric respond? Man, he's one rude SOB. No, we're not going to violate whatever, public records, meeting act, whatever, just send it, actually, just send me an email, I just won't respond. Am I okay with that?
You're just trying to figure out who's gonna
Yeah, that's all I want, but just, or if you want to do it now, just speak it up. I'll just pick the two people. It'll be quicker.
Happy to, but
I'm happy to go as well. I've worked in HR.
So I haven't, okay.
So
Oh, you work in HR?
I have a master's degree in leadership.
Well, okay, then it
Okay,
should
well,
be you. All
I
right,
didn't know they had master's degrees.
okay.
Slightly qualified.
Show me.
Okay. All right. And I'm suggesting that the hiring process will be similar. It'll be the ad hoc committee. And we'll, the way I hire in my other organization, we have a board, perhaps someone from council, certainly someone from HR will be there, whether they're voting or not, will be determined. But the way we select it, we have to have consensus. Everybody has to be unanimous on who the final person is, okay? So we may go to the executive session, get everybody in, but we might do it that way too. I don't, that's my intent. What I'm getting at is I'm not the one that makes the decision. It's gonna be a group decision. So the other thing I want to get started on is I'd like to sort out this lodging tax going forward of what this looks like and all that stuff. Oh my goodness, I don't want to do this in a group. I'd like to iron it out with 3 people. Again, then put it before the study session. So I'm volunteering myself. Denise is logged off. I understand. But I'm volunteering. So because of that, I'm volunteering her. I just think it's obvious she wants to be on it.
I'd like to be on it.
And then Jane, and we all give that with the 3 of us.
That's fine.
We can meet during the day. I can take time off of work. And we can meet during the day. We'll discuss this in a couple of weeks when someone
Okay.
else is more available. I'd like to get that started. That's all I have. Anything else?
I have
Go
one
ahead.
good of the order. Can anybody tell us the status on the DEI position? Is that moving forward or?
Yeah.
More tomorrow. So that's our top 5 there that we're doing Zooms on, and then we'll keep the update on the next step.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and then my quick closing announcement, the next council meeting will be on Wednesday, January 15th, starting at 5:30 p.m. in the first floor meeting chambers, Normbix Government Center. The public is invited to attend in person or remotely. If anyone wishing to speak during public recognition via Zoom must submit their request through the city clerk by calling 360-473-5323 at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. This meeting's adjourned.
I like the way